SCP-001, the Scarlet King, classified dossier Keter-Apollyon. SCP-001, also known as the Scarlet King, is an ancient metaphysical entity that existed before the universe was formed. Described in many ancient cultures as the destroyer of worlds, the king with the red crown, or the one who tears the veil of reality. The Scarlet King has a colossal form with skin as dark red as blood. Its body can contain countless eyes, mouths, and limbs. The most distinctive feature is a 7-pointed crown on its head. The Scarlet King has the ability to warp reality around itself, transforming matter into blood-like and flesh-like forms, and creating distorted creatures to serve its will. According to ancient texts, the Scarlet King emerged from nothingness after the universe was created, embodying the conflict between order and chaos. It married 7 brides from the Leviathan tribe and bore 7 monstrous children, each representing a different destructive aspect. Currently, the Scarlet King is believed to be imprisoned by 7 pillars or seals at 7 different locations across the globe. Procedure 110 Montauk is continuously performed on SCP-231 to prevent the release of the 7th Childan entity capable of breaking the final chains that bind the Scarlet King. SCP-001 has direct connections to numerous other SCPs. Notably, SCP-231, 7 girls pregnant with the children of the Scarlet King. SCP-2317 may be another manifestation of the Scarlet King. SCP-999 is believed to be the Scarlet King's 7th child, but possesses a positive nature, contrary to its father. If released, the Scarlet King will destroy all realities, recreating the universe into a single existence full of suffering and chaos. It will use its power to tear down the barriers between realities, transforming all into a kingdom of blood, agony, and eternal death. Winter in Reykjavik was always terrifying, but nothing was as terrifying as the reports coming from the village of Húsavík in northern Iceland. 7 children missing for 7 consecutive days. 7 children, each found in an increasingly horrific state. The first had only a few scratches. The 7th, God, I couldn't even describe it without feeling sick to my stomach. I didn't want to go to Iceland, no one did. But when O5 called directly, you didn't have many options. Marcus, O5's voice was ice-cold over the encrypted screen. We have a Keter-Thamil situation in Iceland. The signs match SCP-231. I froze. SCP-231, 7 young girls, each pregnant with a child of the Scarlet King. My God, how could this be? But we have all SCP-231 cases contained. Procedure 110 Montauk has been continuously implemented for decades, I argued. It seems we've missed something, O5 said. Or the Scarlet King has found another way to reach our reality. 12 hours later, I was on a plane to Reykjavik with an MTF squad, sealed evil. 7 elite agents, the best the Foundation could deploy for high-level metaphysical phenomena. The squad leader, Commander John Arnarsson, a native Icelander with eyes as cold as ice, handed me a thick file. 7 children, he said, 7 days, each dying exactly 1 day apart, all found in different caves along the north coast. I opened the file and immediately wanted to close it. Each body was arranged in a bizarre posture with ancient symbols drawn in blood around them. But what truly horrified me was that each child had a crown-shaped cut on their left chest. The Scarlet King's crown, I whispered. Arnarsson nodded. And our projection is an 8th child. No, I shook my head. There will be 7, always 7. 7 pillars of creation, 7 brides, 7 children. Then we're missing one. Another MTF agent, a woman named Freja with 2 pistols holstered on her hips, spoke up. No, I said, feeling a cold dread run down my spine. The 7th was found this morning. That means whatever is happening, it's already begun. Our plane landed in a severe blizzard. From the airport, we drove to a temporary Foundation base disguised as a geological research station near the village of Húsavík. The surrounding landscape was surreal. Frozen plains stretched out, occasionally dotted with plumes of smoke from hot springs, and in the distance, dormant volcanoes loomed over us like ancient gods. The lead researcher at the base, Dr. Helena Magnus, greeted us with eyes dark from lack of sleep. We've run all the tests on the bodies, she said, leading us to a makeshift autopsy room. No signs of traditional injury, they were simply empty. Empty, I asked. Their internal organs were intact, but non-functional. As if their souls had been sucked out, She pointed to a screen displaying MRI images of the seventh child, and neural particulate signatures in the frontal lobe. It's identical to what we see in victims exposed to SCP-2317. I felt my throat constrict. SCP-2317, the demiurge, another aspect of the Scarlet King. This confirmed our worst fears. Anything else? I asked, trying to control my voice. Dr. Magnus bit her lip. Field agents found this in the cave where the seventh victim was discovered. She opened a drawer and took out a piece of ancient birch bark wrapped in an evidence bag. Written on it in what looked like dried blood was a simple message: 7 children of 7 brides will open the gate. We need to go to that cave, I said, feeling desperation rise in me. Arnarsson looked out the window where the blizzard was intensifying. In this weather, impossible. We'll freeze to death before we get halfway. If we don't go, I said, my voice strained, everyone will die, not just in Iceland, everywhere. Arnarsson and Fredja exchanged glances. Finally, he sighed. Get ready, we leave in 20 minutes. As we bundled into our cold-weather gear and armed ourselves, I couldn't help but feel a terrible sense of dread, as if we were stepping into the very gates of hell. In my jacket pocket, I carried something provided by a secret Foundation lab, a small vial containing an inky black liquid known as tears of red. It was the only known substance capable of temporarily weakening entities related to the Scarlet King. As we stepped into the storm, I could have sworn I heard laughter in the wind. Our all-terrain vehicle struggled through the raging blizzard as we headed north along the coast. The car swayed violently, its headlights barely illuminating a few meters ahead in the swirling whiteout of snowflakes. How much further? I asked, shouting to be heard over the wind howling through tiny cracks in the windows. About 5 kilometers, Dr. Magnus replied, her eyes glued to the GPS screen. But the last half of the journey will have to be on foot. The cave is located on a cliff face inaccessible by vehicle. Commander Arnarsson drove with absolute focus, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Beside me, MTF Agent Fredja rechecked the ammo clips of her specialized pistols. Blessed steel bullets, she explained, catching my curious gaze. Forged from fragments of SCP-012 and blessed by an exiled priest of the broken church. I nodded. SCP-012, a cursed musical score written in human blood, capable of driving viewers to suicide. Its steel could inflict harm on metaphysical entities. It turns out there was a reason Fredja was chosen for this mission. Our vehicle suddenly screeched to a halt, skidding on the ice. This is as far as we go, Arnarsson said. We'll have to walk from here. We donned our extreme cold-weather parkas and checked our gear. Each of us carried flashlights, comms equipment, MREs, and our own weapons. I touched the vial of tears of red in my pocket to make sure it was still there. As we stepped out from the relative protection of the vehicle, the force of the storm almost knocked me off my feet. The temperature must have been below degrees Celsius, and the wind felt like blades cutting through our clothes. We formed a single file line, Dr. Magnus leading with the GPS. The MTF agents followed, with me in the middle and Arnarsson bringing up the rear. We struggled through deep snow and slippery rocks. I don't know how long we walked, perhaps 30 minutes, perhaps 3 hours, when Dr. Magnus suddenly stopped. We're close, she said, pointing ahead. The cave is at the base of that cliff. Even through the snow, I could see the outline of a massive cliff rising from the black, ominous coastline under the gloomy sky. But something was wrong. As we approached, I noticed a light, a faint red glow emanating from the mouth of the cave. Stop, I signaled. Something's in the cave. Arnarsson motioned for his team to deploy. The MTF agents moved with perfect precision, weapons raised. Fredja and another agent positioned themselves on either side of the cave entrance while the others formed a defensive semicircle. 3, 2, 1, Arnarsson whispered into his comms, and the agents swept their flashlights into the cave, weapons ready. Nothing happened, no shouts, no gunfire, just an eerie silence. Clear, Fredja reported, her voice strangely flat. Doctor, you should come here. I moved forward, feeling my heart pound in my chest. When I reached the cave entrance, I understood why Fredja was so shocked. The cave was larger than I expected, about 4 meters high and twice as wide. And all over the cave walls were ancient symbols and glyphs drawn in what looked like fresh blood, emitting a faint red glow. But what truly captivated my attention were 7 stone pedestals arranged in a semicircle at the back of the cave. On each pedestal lay a child, the 7 victims. But that's impossible, Dr. Magnus gasped. We brought their bodies back to base. These can't be them. These aren't children, I said, trying to suppress my horror. They're vessels, containers for something else. As I approached the 7 motionless children, I could see that they were no longer human. Their skin was bone-white and taut over their skeletons, as if they had been drained of all bodily fluids. Their eyes were wide open, but instead of normal whites and pupils, there were only glowing red orbs, emitting a faint, eerie light. In the center of the semicircle was an intricate drawing on the floor, 7 overlapping triangles forming a crown-like shape. "The Scarlet King's crown," I whispered. As I stepped into the circle to examine it more closely, the eyes of the 7 children simultaneously turned towards me. Not a muscular movement, but just the red orbs rotating in their desiccated sockets. I froze, feeling a primal fear I had never experienced in all my years working with the SCP Foundation. "The one who brings the tears," the 7 children said in unison. Their voices were not those of children, but ancient, raspy sounds. "The one who brings the tears, for what purpose, small human?" I swallowed, feeling the MTF agents aim their weapons at the children. "I'm here to stop him," I said, "to keep the Scarlet King behind the gate." A terrible laughter erupted from the mouths of the 7 children simultaneously, a sound like tearing metal, like a shriek of pure despair. "Stop, stop!" The voices grew so loud that dust fell from the cave ceiling. "You cannot stop what began long before time existed. The Scarlet King was here before your universe was formed. He will be here after it crumbles." I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Freja, her face tight with tension. "We should leave," she whispered. "Now." "Too late," the 7 children said, even though Freja had whispered very softly. "The 7 crowns have been severed. The 7 are becoming one. The 7th child will break the final chains." At this, Arnarson stepped forward, his gun aimed at the child in the middle. "Whatever you are," he snarled, "you are violating Foundation containment protocols, by secret order." The 7 children simultaneously turned their heads towards him, and I swear there was a fleeting smile on their no longer human faces. Then, faster than the eye could follow, one of the children leaped from its stone pedestal and lunged at Arnarson. Freja fired before I could even shout. The gunshot echoed through the cave like thunder, and the blessed steel bullet tore straight through the child's chest, leaving a glowing, incandescent hole. But instead of falling, the child continued its lunge, and before Arnarson could pull the trigger, it was upon him. I will never forget what happened next. As the child's bony fingers touched Arnarson's face, his skin began to shrivel, to shrink, as if every drop of fluid in his body was being sucked out. He didn't even have time to scream. Within seconds, only a desiccated husk remained where Commander John Arnarson had stood. "Red," I shouted. "Use the red." The horror had paralyzed the others, but my voice snapped them back. The MTF agents began tearing open their pouches, pulling out vials containing the same black liquid as mine. "Spray them, don't let them touch you," I screamed as the remaining 6 children leaped from their pedestals and lunged towards us with impossible speed. The MTF agents uncapped their vials and began spraying the black liquid onto the children. Each time the tears of red touched them, a plume of white smoke rose and the children shrieked in an inhuman voice. But they did not stop. Dr. Magnus stumbled, and one of the children lunged at her. Before anyone could react, her body shriveled, her skin and flesh dried up, leaving only a husk. I opened my vial and poured the entire liquid onto the cave floor, directly onto the crown drawing. Immediately, a terrible shriek erupted from the 7 children simultaneously, and they fell, writhing in agony. "Get out of here," I yelled at the survivors. "Now!" We scrambled out of the cave, plunging into the waiting blizzard. But as we looked back, I realized that the white smoke from the cave wasn't snow. It was a pillar of pure energy shooting into the sky in a strange, crown-like shape, a colossal crown. "It has begun," I gasped. "The Scarlet King is awakening." The 4 of us who survived, myself, Freja, and 2 other MTF agents, Sigurd and Einar, raced back to the vehicle, trying to put as much distance as possible between us and that cursed cave. But when we reached it, the car was buried under snow, its engine stone cold. "Call for a chopper," Freja snarled into her comms, her voice tight, but I could hear the underlying fear. "Repeat, this is MTF Epsilon 10 requesting immediate evacuation." "We have multiple casualties, repeat, multiple casualties," only Static replied. "Damn it," she cursed, spinning around. "The storm is jamming the signals or something is blocking us." I looked back towards the cliff and the cave. The pillar of white light was still erupting into the sky, but now it had expanded, tearing through the blizzard, creating an eerie hole in the clouds. Through it, I could see the red sky. "We have to find shelter," I said, having to shout over the wind, "and prepare for the worst." Sigurd gestured northeast. "There's a doomsday research station about 5 kilometers that way, built during the Cold War. It's designed to withstand a nuclear blast." "That's the best idea we have," I said. We pooled our resources and began the arduous trek through the storm. But when we were about a kilometer from the cave, the ground began to shake. "Earthquake?" Einar asked, tense. "Worse than that," I muttered, looking back at the cliff. Massive cracks were forming along its surface, and from within those cracks, a vivid red light streamed out. We stood there, horrified and mesmerized as the cliff fractured, fragments of rock flying everywhere, and from within something was emerging, a colossal structure, like a tower or a pillar, made of a dark red substance that looked both like flesh and metal. "One of the Scarlet King's pillars," I whispered, recognizing what I was seeing. "That's one of the 7 pillars that held him captive, and now it's collapsing," Freja said, her voice almost mesmerized. 7 children, 7 sacrifices, 7 pillars. "Run!" I exclaimed, utter terror flooding my mind. "Run now!" We ran through the snow, the wind howling and the snow biting at our clothes. Behind us, the red pillar continued to erupt from the earth, soaring into the sky, tearing through the clouds. But instead of an image of solidity, it swayed and cracked as if it were collapsing or being unleashed. We didn't know how far we had run when we saw the outline of a low, white building on top of a hill, the Doomsday Research Station. "Almost there," Sigurd shouted, his voice swallowed by the wind. But as we began to climb the hill, I noticed something strange. The snow-covered ground ahead of us, it was moving. No, the hill was moving, undulating as if something colossal lay beneath it, awakening from a long sleep. "Stop!" I yelled, but Sigurd was too far ahead. As he reached the top of the hill, the ground cracked open, and from within the earth something surged out. A massive, writhing creature with dark red skin and countless tentacles and arms. It wrapped itself around Sigurd, pulling him into a gaping maw. Sigurd's scream was cut short by the sickening sound of crushing bones. "The other way." Freja screamed, pulling Einar and me aside as the monstrous creature turned towards us. We plunged down a small ravine, sliding on snow and ice, while the creature's growls and roars echoed behind us. We hid in a crevice between 2 large rocks, trying to catch our breath. My hands trembling, I pulled out my reinforced tablet, trying to connect to the Foundation's comm system. "No signal," I gasped. "We're completely isolated." "What was that monster?" Einar asked, his eyes wide with horror. "One of the Scarlet King's 7 children," I said, trying to calm myself. "SCP-2317 perhaps, or an aspect of it. If what I suspect is true, we are witnessing the collapse of the 7 seals, the 7 pillars that held the Scarlet King captive." "And when all 7 pillars collapse?" Freja asked, reloading her pistol, though she must have known that conventional weapons would be useless against such creatures. "Then the Scarlet King will return," I whispered. "And not just here, everywhere, all realities. Remember his name. In many ancient languages, scarlet doesn't just refer to a color, it refers to the veil terror. He tears open realities, creating pathways between universes." "And what do we do now?" Einar asked, his voice breaking. I looked back at my tablet, trying to come up with a plan, but instead of the blank screen I expected, a message was flashing on it. A message sent through the O5 emergency comms system designed to operate even in apocalyptic scenarios. "Protocol Omega Red has been activated," I read, feeling my throat constrict. "All Foundation facilities immediately implement XK-class deluge procedures." I repeat, Protocol Omega Red has been activated. Freja and Einar looked at me, horror etched on their faces. They both knew what that meant. Protocol Omega Red was the ultimate doomsday plan, only enacted when the Foundation believed humanity's existence was irrevocably threatened. "It's happening everywhere," Einar whispered. "Not just here." I nodded, fear rising within me. 7 locations, 7 pillars, 7 gates, all collapsing simultaneously. A roar reverberated above us, and we looked up to see the sky tearing open. There was no other way to describe it. A colossal lie in the fabric of reality itself, stretching wide, and through it I could see something else. Another sky, blood-red, with colossal shapes moving within it. "We have to move," Freja said, pulling me to my feet. "We need to find." But her words were cut short by a blinding flash from the sky. It shot straight towards us, a beam of vivid red light from the tier above. And in that beam, I saw images 7 women chained to 7 thrones, each pregnant with a child of the Scarlet King. "The 7 brides," I whispered. "He's found us. The Scarlet King has sensed our presence." The red beam struck the rock above us and it began to melt, transforming into a dark red liquid. The liquid dripped down, each drop hissing like molten metal as it touched the snow. And from those drops, tiny creatures began to form. Small, red beings with countless arms and legs, hissing in children's voices. "Run!" Freja screamed, firing a burst of bullets into the gathering creatures. Her blessed steel rounds ripped them apart into puddles of red flesh. But there were too many, and they were moving too fast. We ran through the snow, plunging down what appeared to be a natural trail between the rocks. Above us, the tear in the sky was growing, expanding like a colossal wound. "In there!" Freja shouted, pointing to a small cave ahead. We scrambled towards it, the tiny red creatures clawing at our heels, mere centimeters away. We squeezed into the cave, finding it deeper than we thought, opening into a tunnel leading underground. Einar pulled 2 rocks to block the entrance, preventing the small creatures from following us. "What do we do now?" he gasped, sweat and tears freezing on his cheeks. I looked down at my tablet, still flashing the Omega Red Protocol notification. But now there was another piece of text. "All Foundation personnel to proceed to the nearest M7 shelter location. O5 command and shelter locations to be protected by Archangel-class reality anchors." "Shelter M7, I said, a flicker of hope. "Where would the nearest one be?" Freja thought for a moment, then pointed into the tunnel ahead. "If I remember the maps correctly, there's an underground facility near Akureyri, accessible through the cave system, but it's about 40 kilometers. "Then let's go," I said, switching on my flashlight. "It might be our only chance to get out of this alive." As we began our descent into the dark tunnel, I couldn't help but look back at the rocks blocking the entrance. Through a small gap, I could see the sky outside, now completely blood-red. And for a moment, I thought I saw a colossal shadow pass, a shadow in the shape of a crown. The tunnel led us deep underground, deeper and deeper. The air became damp and oppressive, carrying the scent of mildew and something else, the metallic tang of blood and hot metal. Our flashlights cast small circles of light in the dense darkness, reflecting off the wet surfaces of the rock walls. "Have you ever heard of Shelter M7? Einar asked, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. "Only rumors," I replied. "One of the Foundation's long-term facilities, designed to remain operational even if the rest of the world collapses. They're equipped with reality anchors and metaphysical defenses strong enough to withstand most Apollyon-class threats." "Even the Scarlet King?" Freja asked, glancing back the way we came. I didn't answer. None of us wanted to face the real answer. We continued in silence, save for the sound of our boots on the rock and our own breathing. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers, tiny voices too faint to distinguish words but clear enough for me to know they were there. But when I stopped to listen, only silence replied. After about an hour of walking, the tunnel widened into a large cavern. Our flashlights weren't strong enough to illuminate the entire space, but I could feel its vastness, an open, cold, and empty void above us. "Keep to the far left," Freja instructed. "We need to find a passage on the other side." We hugged the side of the cavern, stepping carefully on the uneven rock floor, and then Einar stopped abruptly. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. We stood still, listening. At first, I heard nothing. Then I picked up a faint sound, like someone whimpering, a child crying. "Don't listen to it," I said, suddenly feeling cold. "It's not real." "But what if it's another survivor?" Einar asked, his voice confused. "We can't just leave them." "It's not a child," I insisted. "Einar, remember your training. This is one of the oldest tactics of metaphysical entities. They mimic the sounds of weak, vulnerable creatures to lure prey." The crying grew louder, more piteous. It was so clear now that I could pinpoint its location from the other side of the cavern. In the dense darkness where our flashlights couldn't reach, Einar stared in that direction as if mesmerized. Then, before Freja or I could stop him, he began to walk towards the sound. "Einar." I yelled, trying to keep my voice down. "Don't." But he didn't turn back, didn't react. He just kept walking forward, his flashlight creating a faint beam as if he were walking in a dream. Freja grabbed my arm. "We can't leave him," she whispered. "We need to." But her words were cut short by a scream, Einar's scream, filled with pure horror. Then his flashlight vanished. "Einar," I called out, forgetting all caution. No answer. Freja and I stood there, frozen. Our flashlights swept through the darkness, trying to find any sign of our teammate, but there was nothing, just endless black. And then the crying started again, But now it was different. It was no longer a child's cry. Now it was Einar's cry. "Help me," his voice wailed from the darkness. "Please, it's eating me from the inside." "Run," Freja whispered, her voice trembling. "Now." We turned and ran along the edge of the cavern, trying to find the exit Freja had mentioned. Behind us, Einar's pleas and whimpers transformed, twisting into something no longer human. A dry, skeletal laugh mingled with whispers in an ancient language I didn't understand but still felt heavy, menacing. Finally, we found a fissure in the wall, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. We forced ourselves into it, our clothes and skin scraped by the sharp rock edges. But fear kept us from feeling the pain. This tunnel was narrower than the last, but at least it led us away from the cavern and whatever had taken Einar. We moved as fast as we could, our flashlights dancing on the rock walls as we half ran, half slid through the tunnel. After about half an hour, the tunnel suddenly opened into another space. But this was not a natural cavern. This was a man-made structure. Gray concrete walls, a low ceiling with non-functional fluorescent lights, and a rusted metal floor. "An old Foundation facility," I whispered, sweeping my flashlight around the space. "Site 335, I think," Freja replied, her voice still strained. "An abandoned research outpost from the 1960s. It was built to study reality fissures found in the cave system." My heart pounded. "Reality fissures? In this cave?" Freja nodded, her eyes scanning her surroundings cautiously. "They found cracks in the rock that just disappeared, tunnels leading to places that shouldn't exist." At first, they thought they were spatial gates, but then they discovered it was something else, points where our reality touched other realities. "The seventh child," I whispered, remembering the SCP-031 document. "The seventh child is supposed to open these gates." We continued to explore the facility carefully, wary of any movement or sound. The offices and labs scattered along the main corridor were empty and dusty, as if abandoned in haste. Papers still lay on desks, half-empty coffee cups covered in thick mold. "They fled," I said, picking up a stained piece of paper. "In 1964, there was an incident." "What kind of incident?" Freja asked, looking over my shoulder. I swept my flashlight across the page, reading the hurried handwritten notes. "Experiment 355, 15th iteration failed," I read aloud. "Fissure unstable, whispers heard, red bleeding through. Implement Sunset Protocol. Seal facility." I looked up, meeting Freja's gaze. "They found something related to the Scarlet King 60 years ago, and now whatever they tried to prevent is getting out," she concluded, her voice losing its usual composure. We continued down the corridor, eventually finding a staircase leading upwards. At the top of the stairs was a heavy metal door with the Foundation symbol and the words, "Sealed by O5 command." "Looks like this is our way out," I said. Freja stepped up, examining the door. "Locked, but I can get it open." She pulled a small device from her utility belt, attaching it to a control panel beside the door. "This is an MTF master key, can open most Foundation systems, even old ones." The device flashed green, and with a creaking groan, the metal door slowly slid open. Cold, fresh air rushed in a welcome change from the oppressive, musty air below. We stepped out and found ourselves outside, on the side of a mountain. It was dark, but not normally dark. The sky was a deep blood red with black cracks running through it like veins. Below us, in the distance, I could see the lights of a city, Akureyri perhaps. "Things are getting worse fast," I whispered, staring at the sky. "Reality is unraveling." Freja checked her GPS. "We're close. Shelter M7 should be about 10 kilometers southeast of here." We began to descend the hill, heading towards the lights, trying to move quickly but cautiously. Everything around us seemed wrong. Trees twisted into unnatural shapes, rocks were a strange reddish gray. And a few times, I thought I saw figures moving at the periphery of my vision. But when I turned to look, there was nothing. As we approached the city, we began to see signs of chaos. Cars abandoned in the streets, doors hanging open, houses with shattered windows, and blood everywhere, forming strange patterns on the ground, like the symbols from that cursed cave. And the population was gone, not a single person. "This place was evacuated," Freja said. "The Foundation must have gotten an early warning from reality monitoring systems. Or something came and took them all," I couldn't help but add. We moved carefully through the deserted streets, still heading southeast. I had my tablet set to scan mode, trying to pick up any sign of Shelter M7. If it was nearby, it would emit a signal that Foundation equipment could detect. And then, just as we turned a corner, we stopped dead in our tracks. Ahead of us, spanning the entire street, was one of the red pillars, like the one we had seen emerging from the cliff. But this pillar was shattered, broken in half. Its two fragments lay amidst crushed buildings, and from its base a dark red liquid poured out, flowing down the city gutters like blood from a colossal wound. "Another pillar," Freja whispered. "Number 2, and it's been destroyed," I said. That's why things like what was in the cave can get out. The barriers between realities are collapsing. As we watched, the ground began to shake beneath our feet, slowly at first, then more violently. The buildings around us began to sway, bricks and glass raining down onto the street. "Run!" Freja shouted, pulling me towards a gap between two buildings. Just as we reached it, the building behind us collapsed, sending a wave of dust and debris down the street. But it wasn't just building debris. From the dust and rubble, creatures began to emerge. Humanoid but twisted and deformed, with too many limbs and skin a raw, bloody red, as if they had just been flayed. They moved with jerky, unnatural motions, advancing towards us. "Manifestations of the Scarlet King," I gasped. "Tiny fragments of him bleeding into our reality." Freja opened fire on the closest creatures. Her blessed steel bullets tore through them, reducing them to chunks of raw red flesh. But for everyone shot down, it seemed 2 more emerged from the rubble. "We have to keep moving," she snarled, pressing against a wall and moving low. They seemed to sense heavy movement. We weaved through alleys and side streets, trying to avoid the creatures, engaging only when absolutely necessary. Freja was a living weapon. She fired with incredible precision, never wasting a shot, never missing. But I could see that she was slowing down, sweat beading on her forehead, her breathing becoming heavier. "Do you see that?" she suddenly said, pointing ahead. I followed her finger and felt a flicker of hope. About a kilometer ahead, seemingly surrounded by a faint blue aura, was a large, gray, building-in astronomical observatory by its appearance. But I recognized the construction. It was a facade, a camouflage for a foundation facility. "Shelter M7, I whispered. "We found it." My tablet emitted a faint beep, confirming Shelter M7 was just a kilometer ahead. Safety at least temporary from this nightmare. But as we looked at the path ahead, my heart sank. Between us and the shelter, the ground was crawling with creatures, hundreds, perhaps thousands, of distorted fragments of humanity. And standing amongst them, towering over everything else, was a tall, gaunt figure, at least 4 meters tall, with multiple arms and a head adorned with a crown of sharp thorns. "Oh no," Freja whispered, her voice filled with horror. "It's a prince," I said, feeling utter dread rise within me. "One of the Scarlet King's children." We huddled behind an overturned car, observing the hundreds of deformed creatures and the colossal prince blocking the way to Shelter M7. Freja rechecked her ammunition, her face grim. "I have 2 magazines left," she whispered. "Not enough for that horde, certainly not enough for that thing." "A prince," I whispered again. "One of the Scarlet King's 7 children. If the legends are true, each child, born from one of the brides, possesses an aspect of the Scarlet King's power. They are Keter entities, perhaps even Apollyon. So how do we get past it?" Freja asked, her blue eyes locked on mine, searching for a hope I wasn't sure I could provide. I looked around, desperately searching for a plan and out. Then I noticed a sporting goods store across the street. Its windows were shattered, but its structure was still largely intact. "In there," I pointed. "I can only imagine it has something that can help us." We quickly crossed the street, careful to avoid detection by the horde of creatures gathered around the prince. Inside the store, shelves were toppled in disarray, but there was still plenty of gear-climbing equipment, camping supplies, and most importantly, a shelf of fuel canisters for camping stoves. "This might work," I said, grabbing several canisters. "We can't defeat that prince, but maybe we can create a diversion." Freja quickly understood my idea. She tore some clothes from a rack, ripping them into long strips, and began fashioning crude fuses. Within minutes, we had a rudimentary set of Molotov cocktails, fuel canisters with fabric wicks. "What's the plan?" she asked, stuffing the bombs into a bag. "We'll distract the prince and his horde," I explained. "Set fire to the building to their east, create enough chaos for us to slip through to Shelter M7. Freja nodded, her face determined. "I'll draw their attention with gunfire." "You throw the bombs." We left the sporting goods store and skirted through the alleys, moving towards an abandoned apartment building adjacent to the horde. As we got close enough, Freja hid behind a damaged truck, aiming her pistol at the prince. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded, lighting the fuse of the first bomb. Freja fired 3 shots, each striking the prince's head. The blessed steel bullets actually had an effect. The creature's head snapped back, glowing holes appearing, oozing dark red liquid. The creature roared in an inhuman voice, the sound loud enough to rattle the surrounding windows. I threw the first bomb into the apartment building, followed by the second and third. Each exploded into a fireball, engulfing the building in flames within seconds. The creatures turned towards the fire, confused and drawn by the light and heat. "Now!" I yelled, and we began to run, circling around the confused horde, heading straight for Shelter M7. For a moment, our plan seemed to be working. The creatures were moving towards the fire, and the prince was too busy healing the wounds on its head. We were about halfway to the shelter when a terrible shriek erupted behind us. I risked a glance back and saw the prince had turned its head towards us, its two red eyes locked onto our position. He knows where we are," Freja screamed as all the creatures simultaneously turned towards us and began to chase. We ran at full speed, breathing becoming ragged, legs burning, but fear propelled us forward. Behind me, I could hear the pounding footsteps of the creature horde and the heavy strides of the prince, each step making the ground tremble. The blue aura of Shelter M7 grew closer. Now I could see more detail, a fence surrounding the building and a gate with the foundation symbol. Even from this distance, I could feel the reality anchors, a tingling sensation on my skin, like static electricity. "Almost there," I yelled, exhilarated. Then, suddenly, a colossal shadow fell over us. The prince had leaped ahead of its horde of minions and landed directly in front of us, blocking the path to the shelter. We skidded to a halt, almost falling from the momentum. Now, face to face, I truly saw the horror of the prince. It stood nearly 5 meters tall, its body humanoid but twisted and elongated. Its skin was dark red, like dried blood, with black veins running across its surface like a web. Its head was not human, but like that of some horned animal, with a 7-pointed crown growing directly from its skull. It had 7 arms, each ending in long, blade-like claws. Freja fired at its chest, the last 2 rounds from her pistol. The blessed steel bullets created glowing holes, but the prince didn't even flinch. "Small human," it said, its voice like scraping metal, like countless voices speaking at once. "You killed one of my brothers in that cave. I felt it, its soul screaming in fury." "We didn't kill anything," I said, trying to buy time, desperately thinking of a way past. "We were just defending ourselves." The prince tilted its head, an eerie, almost curious gesture. "Defending? Is that not what Father wants from you? To defend your reality? But you have failed. The 7 pillars have fallen, the 7 seals have been broken. My Father is coming, and before him all realities shall burn and be reborn." "It's not over yet," Freja snarled, throwing her empty pistol at the prince's face and drawing a knife from her belt. "You won't get past us," the prince laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Brave, my father will reward you for that. Perhaps you will become his 8th bride." And with incredible speed for a creature of its size, the prince lashed out with one of its long arms, snatching Freja with its blade-like claws. She screamed and plunged her knife into its arm, causing dark red liquid to spurt out, but its grip did not loosen. "Freja!" I screamed, desperately looking around for a weapon, anything, but the prince had lifted Freja, bringing her close to its monstrous face, examining her like a curious trinket. Freja struggled and stabbed, blood flowing from the cuts where its claws pierced her, but she did not give in. "Look," the prince whispered, and in its voice there was an eerie reverence. "A true warrior, a heart of fire." Then, with a decisive movement, a movement I couldn't even follow, the prince tightened its grip. Freja let out a faint cry, then went silent. Blood spurted between the prince's fingers, dripping onto the ground like dark red rain. "No," I wailed. Despair and agony overwhelmed me, forcing me to my knees. The prince opened its hand, and what remained of Freja mangled mess of flesh and shattered bone fell to the ground with a wet thud. The sight was too horrific to process. I could only stare, my mind refusing to accept what had just happened. "So," the prince said, its voice coldly amused. "Now it's just you, small human, the one who carries the tears of red. Do you think you can stop this? Do you think you can stop my father?" I didn't answer. Instead, I looked at the fence of Shelter M7, just a few hundred meters away, its reality anchor glowing faintly blew a promise of safety I wasn't sure I could reach. "You cannot escape," the prince said, as if reading my thoughts. "No one can escape. The 7 children of the 7 brides have been born, the 7 pillars have fallen, the 7 seals have been broken, and now my father's kingdom shall come." As the prince spoke, the sky above tore wide open, the crack growing wider and wider, revealing a dark, twisting red void within. From the fissure, something was descending. A colossal red mass, writhing like raw flesh but hard as metal, emitting a searing light. "The throne," the prince whispered, looking up with reverence. My father's throne has come, the rebirth has begun. I knew I was out of time. As the red mass descended, I could feel reality around me beginning to distort, to twist. The air became thick and heavy, as if I were breathing liquid instead of air. The surrounding buildings began to melt, their structures bending in ways that defied normal physics. And the horde of distorted creatures behind the prince were advancing, very close, their mouths wide open, their hands reaching for me. In a final, desperate act, I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled out my tablet, searching for Shelter M7's security systems, activating Emergency Protocol Leviathan. I mumbled, my fingers flying across the virtual keyboard. Decryption code, Crimson Rising. It was a Foundation protocol I had learned about through O5 briefings. A protocol designed to expand a shelter's reality anchor to cover a surrounding area in dire emergencies. It would drain most of the shelter's power, potentially weakening its primary anchors. But it was my only chance, and by some miracle it worked. A wave of blue energy erupted from Shelter M7, spreading outwards in all directions like a sphere of light. It washed over me, leaving a tingling sensation on my skin, and advanced towards the prince and its horde. As the reality anchor touched the prince, it roared in genuine pain. Its skin began to smoke and sizzle, fragments of it rising into the air like red ash. It turned towards me, its eyes burning with hatred. You! It roared. I will. But it never finished its threat. The reality anchor continued to expand, enveloping the prince completely. And with a muffled shriek, it was torn apart, dissolving into plumes of red smoke. I didn't waste the opportunity. I ran, faster than I ever had before, straight for the gate of Shelter M7. Above me, the red throne was still descending, but now it seemed to be impeded by the reality anchor, which was pushing back. As I reached the gate, it automatically slid open, as if connected to the emergency code I had entered. I stumbled inside, gasping and exhausted, just as the gate slammed shut behind me. Inside, a group of Foundation security personnel was waiting, weapons raised. When they saw me, alone, bloody, and nearly collapsing, they lowered their weapons. Dr. Gord, a woman with a commander's insignia, stepped forward. Is that really you? We thought all of MTF Epsilon 10 was lost. They're dead, I gasped. All of them, I'm the only one left. And outside. She asked as medics rushed forward with a stretcher and equipment. The Scarlet King, I whispered, feeling darkness invade my vision as exhaustion finally overwhelmed me. He's coming. The 7 seals have been broken. The 7 pillars have fallen. He's coming and we can't stop it. Then everything went black. I dreamt of 7 scarlet thrones arranged in a circle on an endless plain. On each throne sat a woman, chained the Scarlet King's 7 brides. They were not human, not entirely. Their skin too pale, their eyes too large, their limbs too long. But they were not monsters either. Instead, they were something in between, beautiful and terrifying at once. They were all pregnant, their bellies distended beneath thin shrouds. And as I watched, they began to give birth, simultaneously, their screams merging into a sound like tearing metal. From each of them, a creature was born 7 monsters, each different, but all bearing a common mark, a 7-pointed crown on its head. I watched in horror and fascination as the 7 children grew in the blink of an eye, from infants to colossal adult creatures. They stood in a circle, looking up at the sky, and let out a collective roar. The sky cracked open, and from the fissure something emerged. A creature so colossal, so terrifying, that my mind could not fully comprehend it. I could only recognize a colossal 7-pointed crown and a pair of burning red eyes redder than blood, redder than fire, red as the very concept of red. The Scarlet King. And as he descended, the reality around him began to melt, to twist, to distort. From his colossal body, dark red blood poured out, flooding the endless plain, transforming it into a boiling sea of gore. Then he turned towards me, his burning red eyes looking straight into mine, and he spoke, his voice like countless voices together, like the dying shriek of a universe. You cannot escape, small human. No one can escape. I have been here since before time began. I will be here after it ends. And now you belong to me. I awoke with a choked scream, bolting upright in a hospital bed, drenched in sweat and my heart pounding. Around me, medical monitors and equipment beeped an alarm as my vitals spiked. A nurse rushed in, checking the devices. Dr. Gord, you need to calm down. You're safe. You're in Shelter M7. I tried to steady my breathing, looking around the modern medical room. Everything here was clean, white, and sterile, a stark contrast to the bloody nightmare and chaotic world outside. "How long have I been here?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "3 days," the nurse replied, injecting something into my IV. "You suffered severe exhaustion, dehydration, and multiple traumas. We had to put you in an induced coma to allow your body to recover." "What about outside?" I asked, feeling fear rising. "What's happening?" The nurse was silent for a moment, clearly uncomfortable. "Commander Adams will explain everything. I'll let her know you're awake." She hurried out of the room, leaving me with my fears and anxieties. I looked down at my arms. The wounds were bandaged, but I could still see the bruises and cuts beneath. I was lucky, incredibly lucky. Unlike Freja, Arnarsson, Einar, Sigurd, Dr. Magnus, the memories of their deaths flooded back, too vivid, too painful. I felt tears welling up, but I pushed them back. There was no time for grief. If what I had seen was true, if the Scarlet King was truly coming, then all of humanity was in danger. The door opened, and a woman entered, the woman I had met upon arriving at Shelter M7. She wore the black uniform of the Foundation, with a commander's insignia on her chest, her face grim, her dark brown eyes reflecting exhaustion and worry. "Dr. Gord," she said, pulling a chair to the bedside. "I'm Commander Sarah Adams, in charge of Shelter M7. Glad to see you're awake." "What's happening out there?" I asked immediately, wasting no time on pleasantries. "The Scarlet King, has he come?" Adams sighed, rubbing her tired face. "We're not sure. The reality anchors are still active, but they're weakening. The emergency protocol Leviathan you activated drained most of our energy reserves. We've had to narrow the perimeter to conserve what's left." "So you can't see outside?" "We can see, but what we're seeing isn't easy to explain," she said. She picked up a tablet and handed it to me. "These are images from our drones, recorded 2 hours ago." I looked at the screen and felt my gut go cold. The sky was no longer a sky. It had turned completely dark red with black streaks running through it like veins. The ground below was no longer Earth. It had transformed into a dark red, flesh-like material with colossal structures growing from it like bones. And at the center of it all, where Akureyri once was a colossal dark red tower, reaching high into the sky, its top disappearing into the fissures in the air. The tower had a strange shape, like a colossal spine, each vertebra a separate segment rotating, forming a spiraling pattern as it ascended. "What is that?" I whispered, though deep down I already knew the answer. "We believe it's the Scarlet King's throne," Adams said, her voice solemn. "It's recreating reality around it, transforming it into something else, a version of reality aligned with him." "What about the others? The people in the city, the people on Earth?" Adams shook her head, not meeting my eyes. "We don't know. All communication with other Foundation facilities was cut off 36 hours ago. Government lifeline frequencies went silent 24 hours ago. We might be the only ones left." I sank back onto the bed, a heavy feeling pressing on my chest. "So it's all over, we've failed." "Not necessarily," Adams said, a faint glimmer of hope in her voice. "We still have one option, one last option." She pointed to a symbol on the tablet, a symbol I recognized. It represented SCP-999. "SCP-999? I asked, incredulous. "That friendly little orange blob, what can it do against the Scarlet King?" "There's a theory," Adams explained. "A theory only O5 level knows. But given the current situation, I think you should be privy to it. SCP-999 is believed to be the Scarlet King's 7th child, born from the 7th bride." "I don't understand," I said, remembering the lore. "The 7th child is supposed to break the final chains and free the Scarlet King. That's what the legend says, but O5 discovered something else. Procedure 110 Montauk, the procedure used on SCP-231, isn't what most Foundation personnel think. It's not a ritual of torture or abuse. Instead, it's a ritual of protection. Protection for the 7th child. Instead of preventing the 7th child from being born, it ensures that the child is born correctly, unharmed by the Scarlet King's influence. The result is SCP-999, an entity capable of pacifying negative emotions and promoting happiness." "And you think it can do something against the Scarlet King, a harmless little blob?" "Not harmless," Adams said. "Innocent, perhaps, but it carries the Scarlet King's power within it. A piece of him, at least, transformed into something positive. And according to an ancient prophecy O5 discovered, only the King's child can destroy the King." I considered this, trying to grasp its implications. "So where is SCP-999 now?" "That's the problem," Adams admitted. "It's kept at Site 19, the Foundation's main headquarters. If Site-19 still exists and if SCP-999 is still alive, we need to find a way to access it. And how can we do that when outside is a distorted version of reality? Adams stood up, her expression determined. We have a plan, but first you need to recover. Get some more rest. We'll talk later. She left the room, leaving me with my swirling thoughts. SCP-999, the joyful, gelatinous blob that researchers often hugged like a plush toy, was humanity's last hope. It seemed absurd, ridiculous. But after all I had witnessed, I no longer dared to rule anything out. I closed my eyes, trying to rest, but every time I drifted to sleep, I heard them, the whispers, the voices from my nightmare. But now they seemed more real, clearer. 7 children of 7 brides, 7 pillars, 7 seals, all collapsed save one. Only one final one remains, the 7th child, the child of hope. And as I finally fell into a deep sleep, I dreamt of a small orange creature standing in a sea of blood, glowing like a tiny flame in endless darkness. I woke again with a sense of alarm. Something had changed. The medical room was still the same clean, white, sterile, but there was a new tension in the air, and the lights had turned emergency red. I pulled the leads from my arm, trying to stand. My legs trembled, but I forced myself upright. I needed to know what was happening. I stumbled to the door and stepped into the corridor. People were rushing back and forth, their faces tense and afraid. Over the intercom, a monotone voice. All personnel move to battle stations. Activate Mythological Defense Protocol 7. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. I grabbed a technician who was running past. What's happening? The reality anchors, she replied, her eyes wide with fear. They're failing. Something's trying to get in. I released her and tried to find my way to the command center. I needed to find Adams. I needed to know her plan. If the reality anchors failed, we would all be exposed to whatever was outside the Scarlet King's distorted reality. I stumbled through corridors and up staircases, following the signs to the command center. People brushed past me, rushing to their positions, carrying weapons and equipment. No one stopped to help or hinder me. In a chaotic situation like this, a wandering doctor wasn't worth their attention. I finally found the command center, a large control room with screens covering every wall. On the screens, I could see what was happening outside, and the sight froze me. The reality anchor was displayed on the screens as a faint blue aura that was cracking. Dark red fissures were spreading across its surface like veins, and through the cracks, I could see them colossal, writhing, dark red creatures pressing against the anchor, trying to break through. They took many forms, some like distorted humans, some like multi-limbed aberrations, some even like walking towers. But all bore the 7-pointed crown on their heads. All were manifestations of the Scarlet King. In the center of the room, Commander Adams stood before a console, giving orders. She looked tired and stressed but still exuded authority. Divert more power to Reality Anchor B5, she ordered, and prepare the escape module. We need to be ready to evacuate if the anchor fails completely. Commander Adams? I called, stepping towards her. She turned, surprised to see me. Dr. Gord, you shouldn't be out of the medical bay. I can't just lie there while everything falls apart, I said. What's your plan, the one involving SCP-999? She looked at me for a moment, then gestured for me to follow her to a quieter corner of the room. The plan has changed, she said softly. The anchors are failing faster than we anticipated. We don't have time to contact Site-19, even if it still exists. So what do we do now? We're preparing the escape module. It's designed to carry a small team through interdimensional space to a secure location. In this case, Site-19 if it still exists. Interdimensional teleportation technology? I asked, amazed. I didn't know the Foundation had developed that. We've been working on it for decades, Adams explained, using data from SCP-2000 and lessons from SCP-507. The escape module is the first working prototype, untested. But this is an emergency, I finished, and we're out of options. She nodded. Exactly. I'm preparing a small team to undertake this mission. Find SCP-999 and bring it back here. If the hypothesis about it is correct, it might be the only weapon against the Scarlet King. I'll go, I said immediately. You're still recovering from your injuries, she protested. I've seen the Scarlet King or at least one of his princes with my own eyes, I said. I know what we're up against, and I have specialized knowledge of SCP-231 and the Scarlet King's lore. You need me on this mission. Adams looked like she wanted to argue, but a flurry of alarm beeps from the console drew her attention. She rushed back, and I followed. What's the situation? She asked a technician. Bad, the man replied, his face pale. The anchors will fail within 30 minutes, an hour at most, and something's manifesting on the other side, something big. I looked up at the screen and saw a colossal, dark red creature, much larger than the others. It was humanoid in shape but terribly distorted, with too many arms and legs sprouting from its torso, and a head adorned with a colossal 7-pointed crown. It was almost as large as Shelter M7 itself. "Another prince," I whispered, "stronger than the one in Akureyri. Activate the escape module," Adams ordered. "Now, we don't have any more time." The technicians scrambled to obey, entering codes and activating systems. A section of the control room wall slid aside, revealing another room. Inside was a strange machine, a large metal sphere large enough to hold about 5 people, with control panels and seats inside. "The escape module," Adams said. "It creates a small reality bubble around itself, allowing for travel through distorted realities, still relatively safe." "Relatively?" I asked. "Nothing is absolutely safe when dealing with an Apollyon-class entity like the Scarlet King," she admitted. "But it's our best chance." She turned to a group of 3 people standing nearby, 2 security agents and a scientist. "Escape team, you know your mission. Go to Site 19, find SCP-999 and bring it back here. If Site 19 has fallen, look for any sign that SCP-999 is still alive." Then she turned to me. "Dr. Gord, if you truly wish to join this mission, I won't stop you, but you need to understand that this is a one-way trip. Even if you find SCP-999, your chances of returning are very low." "I understand," I said, "but if the Scarlet King takes this reality, there will be no place to return to. I'm going." Adams nodded, then handed me a black Foundation uniform and a gear bag. "Change quickly. You'll be leaving in 5 minutes." I quickly changed into the uniform and checked the gear bag. It contained basic supplies: a pistol, ammunition, a medical kit, MREs, and a small handheld device I recognized as an SCP scanner. It was designed to detect the signatures of nearby SCP entities. It might be useful in finding SCP-999. When I returned to the control room, the escape team was ready. They introduced themselves quickly: Agents Chen and Rodriguez and Dr. Harper, an SCP-999 specialist. "Anchors will fail in 20 minutes, a technician announced. "Module is ready. Go," Adams ordered. We stepped into the metal sphere, trying to find comfortable seats. The door closed with a sealing hiss and the systems began to power up. Screens and lights illuminated around us. "Everyone strap in," Chen said, her voice incredibly calm for the situation. "I'm told the ride can be uncomfortable." I buckled my seatbelt, feeling my heart pound. Through the screens, I could see the control room receding as the module was moved into a launch bay. Adams looked at us, her face solemn. She said something, but I couldn't hear it through the thick shell of the module. "Activation in 3, 2, 1, an automated voice announced from the module's speakers. Then the world around us became a blur of white and red light. And I felt a violent lurch, as if I were being pulled in all directions at once. The pain was unbearable, as if every atom in my body were being stretched and compressed. A few seconds, or maybe a few hours, later it was impossible to tell the stretching sensation stopped. The module's screens went dark, then lit up again, showing what was outside. And what I saw made me want to close my eyes and never open them again. We were in what looked like an ocean of blood, with colossal, dark red structures floating around like mobile mountains. The sky, if it could be called a sky, was pitch black with vivid red cracks running through it. And in the far distance, I could see it a colossal dark red tower reaching endlessly upwards, with a grotesque city at its base. "Site 19, Dr. Harper whispered, pointing to the city or what remained of it. "We've arrived." "My God," Rodriguez whispered, staring out at the screens in horror. "What is that?" "The Scarlet King's kingdom," I replied. "He has transformed reality to his will. This is the world he wants to create." Chen opened a control panel and pressed several buttons. "The module is still maintaining its reality bubble, but power is draining. We have about 12 hours before it fails and we're directly exposed to whatever's out there." "Then we need to move," I said. "Find SCP-999 and get back before the module collapses." Chen maneuvered the module forward, heading towards the grotesquely transformed city that was once Site 19. As we got closer, I could see more detail buildings twisted into impossible shapes, made of a material that looked like bone and flesh. And moving among the buildings, I could see them deformed creatures, like those I had seen in Iceland and Akureyri, but now more numerous, more varied. "Where do we land?" Harper asked, observing the maps on the screen. Containment sector, Chen replied. If SCP-999 is still here, that's where we're most likely to find it. The module banked, flying over the bizarrely transformed city. Through the screens, I could see the creatures below looking up, sensing our presence. A few even stretched their limbs, trying to reach the module, but we were flying too high. Finally, we approached a large building, less deformed than the others, still recognizable in its original architecture. A large, twisted sign, but still legible, read, Containment Sector. That's it, I said. SCP-999 is kept on level B3, room 42. Chen brought the module down, landing on a pad on top of the building. As we touched down, the module shuddered, and I could hear plastic and metal groaning as it contended with the strange atmosphere outside. Oxygen masks, Chen ordered, pointing to a compartment containing specialized masks. We don't know if the air is breathable, but even if it is, it could be contaminated with reality-distorting particles. We donned our masks, checking our weapons and equipment. Rodriguez held a large assault rifle, Chen her pistol, and Harper carried a strange device that looked like a small glass cage. "What's that?" I asked. "A portable containment unit for SCP-999, Harper explained, designed to keep it safe and comfortable during transport. I nodded, rechecking my own pistol. I wasn't a crack shot, but I'd had basic training as a senior researcher. I hoped I wouldn't have to use it. "Ready?" Chen asked, her hand on the door release. We nodded, though none of us felt truly ready for what awaited outside. Chen pressed the button, and the module door opened, revealing the nightmarish world outside. The stench hit my oxygen masked the smell of rotting flesh and hot metal, the scent of blood and death. The air outside was hot and thick, as if we were stepping into a crematorium. The sky above us, now more visible, was an endless black, with vivid red cracks running through it like veins. And through those cracks, I could see something moving, something too vast to comprehend. The surface of the helipad was no longer concrete. It had transformed into a dark red, flesh-like material that squelched beneath our feet as if breathing. And as we walked, it reacted to our presence, pulsating faintly as we stepped on it. "Disgusting," Rodriguez muttered, holding his rifle ready as we advanced towards the door leading into the building. The door, like everything else, had changed. It now looked like the mouth of a colossal creature, with what looked like teeth framing the edges. But it still functioned as a door, opening as Chen pushed it. Inside, the corridors of Site-19 had transformed into something alien. The walls were dark red, twisting at impossible angles, glowing faintly with an internal light. The floor, like the surface outside, was made of a flesh-like material. And on the ceiling, things were moving, small, insect-like creatures, but with too many legs and arms. "B3 level," Harper reminded us, trying to keep her voice calm, though I could see the fear in her eyes. "We need to find stairs or an elevator." We moved carefully through the corridor, wary of any threats. The lights, if they could still be called lights, had morphed into small, floating red orbs, emitting a dim red glow. In that eerie light, everything looked even more warped and distorted. We found the elevator, or what used to be the elevator. Now it looked like a vertical hole in the floor, with what looked like nerves or blood vessels running along the sides, pulsating with an internal light. "I don't think we should use that," I said. "Agreed," Chen said. "Find the stairs." We continued down the corridor, but as we turned a corner, we froze. Ahead of us, blocking the entire corridor, was a terrible sight. A creature that looked as if it were made of many human bodies fused together, all twisted and deformed into an unrecognizable mass. It had countless arms and legs sprouting from a central torso, and where faces should have been, there were only gaping mouths filled with teeth. "My God," Harper gasped. "Don't move," Chen whispered, raising her pistol. Maybe it won't. But the creature had seen us. All its mouths opened simultaneously, and it let out a deafening shriek, not a scream, but a metallic, tearing sound like music played wrong. Then it lunged towards us with impossible speed. Chen and Rodriguez opened fire. The gunshots echoed in the confined space, deafening me even through my oxygen mask. The bullets ripped through the creature, leaving glowing holes, but it did not slow down. It kept lunging, its arms reaching out to grab us. "Run!" I yelled, pulling Harper towards a door to the side. Chen and Rodriguez followed, still firing to keep the creature at bay. We burst through the door and slammed it shut. Chen jammed her rifle into the door handle, temporarily blocking it. From the other side of the door, I could hear the creature slamming into it, making the metal groan. "It won't hold for long," Chen said, her voice strained. "We need to move." We looked around and found ourselves in a lab, or what used to be one. Now it was like a labyrinth of flesh and bone, with what looked like body parts protruding from the walls and floor. At the back of the room, I could see another door. "Through there," I said, leading the way through the grotesque room. As we got halfway through the room, what looked like body parts began to move. Arms reached out from the walls, grabbing at our clothes. Mouths opened from the floor, trying to bite at our ankles. "Don't let them touch bare skin," I yelled, remembering what had happened to Arnarson when the creatures in the cave touched him. Harper shrieked as an arm grabbed her wrist. Rodriguez shot it, making it release its grip, but more arms continued to appear. We finally reached the door on the other side and burst through it, slamming it shut. This time, we found ourselves in a stairwell, still distorted but at least recognizable. "B3, Harper gasped, still clutching the containment unit. 3 levels down. We began to descend the stairs, each step now looking like a segment of a colossal spine. Behind us, I could hear the door being broken down and the sound of many creatures pouring into the stairwell. "They're coming," Rodriguez yelled, firing upwards as the first creature appeared. "Keep moving," Chen ordered. We raced down the stairs, footsteps pounding and gunshots echoing. As we reached the level marked B3, we shoved open a door and burst into another corridor. Harper looked at a distorted sign on the wall, trying to orient herself. "Room 42 should be this way." We ran down the corridor to a door with the number 42 smeared in blood on it. Chen opened it, gun ready, but nothing awaited inside. The containment room was transformed like everything else, but less severely. The walls were dark red but still held their shape, and the floor, though still made of the flesh-like material, was less reactive to our presence. And in the center of the room, in a pool of faint orange light, was a small orange creature SCP-099. It looked like a giant blob of gelatin with the consistency of slime. It had no eyes or mouth, but it moved as if sentient, expanding and contracting, making happy boop sounds. "That's it," Harper whispered, a faint smile on her face. "SCP-099, it's alive. Why isn't it transformed?" I asked, observing the strange creature. "Everything else has been altered by the Scarlet King's influence. Perhaps because it's the Scarlet King's child," Harper speculated. "Perhaps it's immune to his reality-altering effects." We cautiously approached SCP-099. The little creature turned towards us, making happy noises and bouncing up and down in a way that could only be described as excited. "It seems happy to see us," Rodriguez said, lowering his rifle slightly. "SCP-099 responds positively to human presence," Harper explained, holding up the glass cage. "It can sense fear and distress and tries to alleviate it." She knelt, opening the cage. "Hey there, little guy, we need to get you out of here, okay? We need your help." SCP-099 hopped into the cage without hesitation, making joyful sounds. Harper closed the cage, a relieved smile on her face. "Looks like the easy part is done," she said. "Now we just need to get back to the module." A roaring sound cut her off, shaking the entire room. From the corridor outside the door, I could hear the sounds of many creatures approaching. "Too late," Chen said, her voice strained. "They've found us." Rodriguez rushed to the door, looking out. "They're coming, dozens, maybe hundreds." "Is there another way out?" I asked, looking desperately around the room. Harper pointed to a large ventilation shaft on the wall. "There." "It might lead to another corridor or even another stairwell." Chen wasted no time. He fired at the ventilation grate, blowing it open, then helped Harper and me climb in. Rodriguez followed. "Go," he ordered. "I'll hold them off." "No," Rodriguez protested. "We don't leave anyone behind." But Chen pushed him towards the ventilation shaft. "Go, the mission is more important than any of us. SCP-099 must survive." Rodriguez reluctantly climbed into the ventilation shaft. As I looked back, Chen was blocking the door, rifle ready. "Keep going," he said, not looking back. "I'll follow if I can." I knew it was a lie, he wouldn't follow, but I also knew he was right. The mission was more important than any of us. We crawled through the ventilation shaft, Harper leading with SCP-099 in the glass cage. Behind us, I could hear gunfire, roars, and then a single, pained scream. "Chen," Rodriguez whispered, his face grim. "Keep moving," I urged, though my heart was heavy. "We can't let his death be in vain." We continued to crawl. The ventilation shaft grew wider as we went. It too was transformed like everything else. Its surfaces were dark red, glowing faintly and occasionally twitching as if breathing. "Where do you think we're going?" Harper asked, her voice echoing in the confined space. "Up, hopefully," I replied. "We need to get back to the helipad, back to the module." We crawled for a few more minutes, then Harper stopped. "I can see light ahead." We approached and found another exit, another ventilation grate leading into a room. Harper pushed the grate, and it fell with a clatter, allowing us to peer into the room below. It was a large lab, less transformed than other areas of Site-19. The walls were still mostly white, though with streaks of dark red running through them like veins. Machinery and equipment, though twisted and distorted, were still recognizable, and in the center of the room was a large device that looked like a freight elevator. "A teleportation elevator," Harper exclaimed, her eyes wide. "Used to move SCPs within the facility. It could take us directly to the helipad." "Then let's go," I said. We dropped into the lab, Rodriguez going last, rifle ready. Harper examined the teleportation elevator, studying the controls. "It's still functional," she said, surprised. "Backup power is still flowing." "Do you think it's safe?" Rodriguez asked, still wary of the door leading into the lab. "Safer than walking through those corridors full of those things," I replied. Harper activated the elevator and the doors slid open. Inside, the elevator cabin was also transformed. Its surfaces were dark red and pulsating, the walls seemed to breathe, and a dark red liquid dripped from the ceiling onto the floor. "Certainly not a comfortable ride," Harper muttered, but she stepped in anyway, clutching the SCP-999 containment unit. Rodriguez and I followed her, and Harper pressed the helipad button. The elevator shuddered and began to move, not up or down, but diagonally, as if moving through space in a way that defied normal physics. All three of us clung to the handrails as the elevator shook and groaned. "If this elevator takes us straight to the helipad," Harper said, trying to stay calm, "we'll be very close to the module we can." But she never finished the sentence. The elevator suddenly stopped, throwing us against the wall. The lights flickered, then turned emergency red. "What's happening?" Rodriguez asked, his voice strained. "I don't know," Harper replied. A metallic tearing sound cut her off. From the elevator ceiling, a colossal dark red arm, ending in sharp claws, burst through the metal as if it were paper. And following it was a monstrous head with multiple eyes and a 7-pointed crown growing from its skull. "The prince!" I shrieked, falling back against the wall. "One of the Scarlet King's princes?" Rodriguez didn't hesitate. He fired directly at the head, the bullet striking one of the enormous eyes, making it spurt dark red liquid. The creature roared in pain but did not retreat. Instead, it plunged another arm down through the ceiling, tearing the metal like paper. Harper clutched the SCP-999 containment unit, cowering in a corner. The little orange creature inside the cage was trembling, making anxious chirping sounds. "Emergency button," I yelled, pointing to a red button on the control panel. "Press it." Harper reached for the button and slammed it down. The elevator shuddered and began to move again, faster than before, lunging forward with terrifying speed. The prince roared in fury, trying to pull itself into the cabin, but the speed was too great, and it was thrown out of the hole in the ceiling. "We're going too fast," Rodriguez said, clinging to the handrail. "If we hit the end." The elevator suddenly stopped, so violently that it threw all of us against the front wall. The doors slid open, revealing the helipad. We had arrived. We stumbled out, still dazed from the sudden stop. The module was still there, just a few meters away, intact and unharmed. "Run!" I yelled, and we raced towards it. But as we got halfway, the ground beneath us began to shake. The flesh-like surface of the helipad cracked open, and from it a colossal creature emerged, the prince from the elevator. "Back to the module," I roared. Harper and Rodriguez ran ahead while I stopped, turning to face the prince, rifle raised. I knew it wouldn't do much, but if I could slow him down long enough for them to reach the module. I raised my rifle, aiming at one of the prince's enormous eyes. This creature was much larger than the prince I had encountered in Akureyri, at least 10 meters tall, with a dark red, writhing body covered in armor-like scales. Its face was a nightmare of geometry, a network of eyes, mouths, and horns twisted together, and covering it all was the familiar 7-pointed crown, glowing with a fierce red light. "Run!" I yelled at Harper and Rodriguez. "I'll hold him off." Harper looked back, her face pale behind the oxygen mask. She clutched the glass cage containing SCP-999 to her chest, the orange creature inside trembling as it sensed the prince's presence. "No," she called back. "We have to stick together," but I knew it was our only hope. Keep SCP-999 safe, that's all that mattered. Rodriguez pulled Harper towards the module. She reluctantly followed. I turned back to face the prince, raising my small pistol, knowing it would do little, but if I could slow him down just for a moment. The prince advanced, its limbs, too numerous to count, stretched across the helipad. It lowered its head, and I could swear it was smiling, a distorted grin stretching across what might have been its face. "Small human," it said, and its voice was dozens of voices at once from throats of grinding metal and bone. "You carry my father's spark." "Why?" I didn't answer. Instead, I fired. I fired directly into one of its largest eyes, and the bullet pierced it, causing dark red liquid to spurt out. The prince roared in pain, recoiling a step, but immediately advanced, faster than any creature of its size should be able to move. "Fool!" it roared. "You cannot harm me with your human weapons. I am a prince of the 7 crowns. I am the 4th child, the child of intellect and blood. You hold the key to consciousness. I saw your plan through." A rope-like arm lashed out, swift as a cobra strike, wrapping around me before I could react. It hoisted me up, squeezing so tightly I couldn't breathe, bringing me close to the prince's horrifying face. "You carry the 7th child," it whispered, its voice like crushed metal. "You carry the spark, thinking it can fight my father. How foolish!" It squeezed tighter, and I felt my ribs crack. I gasped, unable to breathe, the world beginning to blur around me. "But let me tell you a secret," the prince continued, bringing me closer to its face, so close I could see my reflection in its dozens of eyes. "The 7th child was created for this very purpose. There is a reason why it is not corrupted by my father's kingdom. There is a reason why it exists. It is because when the time comes, it will become the final key." I couldn't comprehend what it was saying. My vision was narrowing, everything turning black. I was almost unconscious when a volley of gunfire erupted, and I felt the grip around me suddenly loosen. I fell to the helipad, coughing, trying to breathe. Through a haze of tears, I saw Rodriguez standing a few meters away, his rifle aimed at the prince, emptying his magazine into the arm that had held me. "Marcus," he yelled, "to the module now." I staggered to my feet and ran towards the module, where Harper stood at the entrance, waving me in. Rodriguez continued to fire, holding off the prince, but I could see his ammunition was running low. And the prince was recovering from the initial shock, extending other arms that were regenerating. "Rodriguez," I called. "Go now." He began to back away, still firing, but one of the prince's arms suddenly lashed out, too fast to see, and pierced straight through Rodriguez's chest. Blood spurted from his back, and he looked down, shocked. His rifle fell from his hands. "No." I screamed, but it was too late. The prince lifted Rodriguez and, with a decisive motion, tore him in half, his entrails and blood raining down onto the helipad like crimson confetti. "Get inside," Harper screamed, pulling me into the module as I stood there, stunned by the sight. "We don't have time." We tumbled inside, and Harper slammed the door shut just as one of the prince's arms slammed into it, denting the metal but not piercing it. She rushed to the control panel, setting down the glass cage containing SCP-099 and began activating the systems. "We have to get back to Shelter M7, she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard urgently. But suddenly, the module was lifted, tilting sideways. The prince had grabbed it, lifting it off the helipad. "Oh no," Harper whispered, her face pale. "We can't activate the teleportation system if we're not grounded. Interdimensional physics don't work that way." The module lurched as the prince shook it like a toy. I struggled to cling to the handrails. Harper had to brace herself against the control panel to avoid falling. SCP-099 vibrated in its cage, making distressed chirping sounds. "There has to be a way," I yelled over the groaning of metal as the module bent under the prince's power. Harper looked around desperately, then her eyes lit up. "Defense systems." "The module is equipped with reality anchor defenses." She reached for another panel, opened it, and pressed a large red button. Immediately, a blue aura surrounded the module, similar to Shelter M7's reality anchor. From outside came a roar of genuine pain, and the module suddenly dropped, crashing down onto the helipad with a stunning impact. Harper and I were thrown across the cabin, slamming into walls and control panels. Did it work? I yelled, staggering to my feet, feeling blood running from a cut on my forehead. Harper scrambled back to the main control panel, checking the systems. "Yes, we can activate the teleportation system now." Outside, I could hear the prince roaring, the sound of scraping metal as it tried to break into the module. But the reality anchor was still active, holding it off. Harper pressed a sequence of buttons, and the screen flashed, "Interdimensional teleportation initiated. Hold on tight." She screamed, clutching SCP-999's cage as we sat down and strapped ourselves in. The world around us became a blur of white, then dark red, then white again. A rapid alternation that made me feel nauseous. The stretching sensation returned, every atom in my body seemingly torn apart. I heard Harper gasp, but the sound was distant, as if coming from a long tunnel. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The module shuddered one last time and the screen displayed. Teleportation complete. We made it, Harper gasped, her eyes wide with amazement. We're back at Shelter M7. Teleportation successful? I looked at the screen displaying the outside. We were in a large room that looked like a garage with concrete walls and heavy equipment. No sign of reality distortion, no dark red surfaces, no dripping liquid, no twisted structures. We were truly back in Shelter M7. Harper opened the module door and we stepped out, still clutching the glass cage containing SCP-999. Immediately, we were surrounded by Foundation security personnel, weapons raised. Hands up, one commanded. We're not a threat, I yelled, raising my hands, careful not to make any sudden movements. I'm Dr. Marcus Gord. This is Dr. Harper. We have SCP-999. As soon as I spoke the words SCP-999, the atmosphere changed. Guns lowered and Commander Adams pushed through the crowd, running towards us. You succeeded, she gasped, looking at the glass cage in Harper's hands. You found it. We lost Chen and Rodriguez, Harper said, her voice tight with grief. They sacrificed themselves to get us here. Adams bowed her head for a moment. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. But now, we need to be quick. The reality anchors are failing faster than we can repair them. We only have about 2 hours before they collapse completely. We followed her through the corridors of Shelter M7, still bruised and exhausted from our journey. Foundation personnel looked at us with surprise, awe, and hope as we passed. Many pointed at SCP-999 in the glass cage, the little orange creature seeming to have calmed down since its encounter with the prince, and now bouncing happily, making joyful noises. Adams led us to a large laboratory near the center of the shelter, where a team of scientists was working on a complex device that looked like a gateway. What is this? I asked, observing the equipment. A psychic reality amplifier, Adams explained, designed to amplify the abilities of a metaphysical entity. In this case, SCP-999's abilities. But how can this little creature defeat the Scarlet King? I asked, looking at the small orange creature, which was now making happy sounds and pressing itself against the glass as if trying to reach us. As I said, Adams said, SCP-999 is believed to be the Scarlet King's 7th child. According to ancient prophecy, the King's child will destroy the King. But it's more than that. SCP-999 has a unique ability. It can pacify negative emotions, fear, anger, hatred, all the things that fuel the Scarlet King. So what's the plan? Harper asked, still clutching the glass cage. What do we do with SCP-999? Adams pointed to the gateway device. We'll place SCP-999 in the psychic amplifier. It will amplify SCP-999's emotional abilities exponentially, covering the entire affected area. In theory, it will weaken the Scarlet King, perhaps even push him back through the reality anchors. In theory? I asked, disliking the uncertainty in her voice. This isn't an exact science, she admitted. We're working with ancient theories and prophecies, but this is our best chance, our only chance. Harper gently placed the glass cage down, and a scientist stepped forward, opening it. SCP-999 hopped out, still making joyful noises, and bounced around the floor, touching people's feet. As it touched me, I felt a wave of warmth and serenity spread through my body. A strange, almost drug-like sensation of pure joy. That's its effect, Adams explained, seeing my surprised expression. Now imagine that feeling amplified 1,000,000 times and broadcast across the affected area. That's what we're trying to achieve. The scientists carefully led SCP-999 to the gateway device, talking to it like a child, coaxing it into position with promises of candy and toys. The little creature seemed excited, hopping into the center of the device without hesitation. Ready? A scientist announced. Begin preparation procedure? The scientists worked at consoles around the device, activating systems and adjusting parameters. SCP-999 sat in the center, making joyful noises, seemingly oblivious to the terrifying threat outside. We'll activate the device as soon as the Scarlet King appears, Adams explained. The reality anchors will fail within 2 hours, and then he will come. And what if this doesn't work? I asked, still unable to believe that the small orange creature could defeat an entity as powerful as the Scarlet King. Then we die, Adams said simply, along with the rest of this reality. The next 2 hours, we prepared. Adams had assigned Harper and me to help fine-tune the amplifier device. With our knowledge of SCP-999 and the Scarlet King, we could adjust the parameters to maximize our chances of success. Now we stood in the command center, watching the screens display the weakening reality anchors. Dark red fissures ran across its surface, spreading wider with each passing second. 1 minute, a technician announced, his voice tense. Anchors will fail in 1 minute. Everyone to stations, Adams ordered over the comms. Prepare to activate the amplifier device. I stood beside Harper, watching the screens with growing dread. Behind the cracks in the anchor, I could see glimpses of the world outside the Scarlet King's transformed reality. A dark red sky with black cracks, a ground made of flesh and bone, and colossal creatures moving within it, all bearing the 7-pointed crown. 10 seconds, the technician counted down. 9, 8, Harper grabbed my hand, squeezing tightly. I could feel her trembling, or perhaps it was me. 7, 6. The cracks in the anchor were widening faster, spreading like a growing spiderweb. 4, 3, 2, I held my breath, feeling my heart stop. 0, anchors failed. For a moment, nothing happened. The reality anchors dissolved into nothingness with a faint blue flash, leaving Shelter M7 exposed to the transformed reality. What's? Adams began, and then it came. The dark red sky cracked open, a colossal tier from horizon to horizon, and from that tier, a colossal creature emerged. A creature so vast it defied comprehension. It had the shape of a man, but twisted and deformed beyond what could be called human. Miles tall, with dark red skin like clotted blood, its body covered in black veins running across it like a web. Its limbs, thousands of arms and legs, stretched across the sky and ground, tearing reality as they moved. And on its head, looming high and menacing, was a 7-pointed crown. Each point a towering spire made of bone and flesh, with burning red flames at its apex. The Scarlet King, I whispered, feeling a pure fear unlike any I had ever known. The colossal creature lowered its vast head, looking directly into Shelter M7, and I felt as if my very soul were being examined, analyzed, judged. It opened its mouth, a dark abyss with countless teeth revolving in concentric circles, and said, "I have come." Its voice was the sound of all things dying, of the universe collapsing, of time ending. I have waited long for this day. Activate the device, Adams shrieked into the comms. Now, on another screen, I could see the lab with the amplifier device. Scientists scrambled to make final adjustments as SCP-999 bounced up and down in the center, making joyful noises, seemingly oblivious to the terrifying threat outside. Activation, a scientist yelled, pulling a lever. The device flared to life, an orange aura surrounding SCP-999. The little creature stood still for a second, as if confused, then it began to glow. A brilliant, warm orange light radiated from it, spreading through the amplifier device and out into the world outside. On the main screen, I could see the orange aura expanding from Shelter M7. The wave of warmth spread across the transformed landscape, and as it touched the Scarlet King, the colossal creature roared not in pain as I had hoped, but in pleasure. "My child," he roared, his voice shaking the walls of the shelter. "My final child, you have returned as was foretold." "No," I whispered, feeling horror overwhelm me. "Something's wrong." "What is it?" Harper asked, her face pale. "The prince tried to tell me something," I said, now with growing panic, "about SCP-999. He said it was the final key. It's not a weapon against the Scarlet King, it's part of his plan." Adams turned to look at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Oh no, you have brought my child back," the Scarlet King said, extending one of his colossal arms towards Shelter M7. "You have fulfilled the prophecy. The 7 children of the 7 brides. When the last returns to its father, all worlds shall become one." The orange aura spread across the landscape, but instead of pushing back the reality distortion, it seemed to intensify it. The sky grew redder, the black cracks widened. The ground was now moving, undulating like breathing flesh. "Remove SCP-999 from the device," Adams ordered into the comms. "Now!" But it was too late. On the screen, I could see the orange light from SCP-999 turning dark red, the color of fresh blood. The little creature twitched as if in pain, and then it began to grow, to expand, to transform, to change. Its color shifted from orange to red, its shape becoming less amorphous, expanding to fill the amplifier device. "We failed," Harper whispered, stunned. "We brought the 7th child back to its father." Outside, the Scarlet King was drawing closer, each colossal step shaking the ground. The walls of Shelter M7 began to crack, dark red veins spreading through the concrete and steel like fissures. All personnel to secondary shelters, Adams ordered, her voice frantic. Activate secondary defenses, but I knew secondary defenses wouldn't do anything. Nothing could stop the Scarlet King now. We had brought back the seventh child, the final key, and now our reality would fall. Then an idea flashed through my mind. A desperate idea, almost certainly doomed to fail, but it might be our last hope. Harper, I said, grabbing her by the shoulders. The escape module, is it still functional? She nodded, her eyes wide. Yes, it's recharging, but we need to activate the interdimensional teleportation system again, I said, already moving towards the exit, not to Site 19 but somewhere else, to another reality. How? That device is only programmed to travel between fixed locations. We'd have to rewrite it. We have to try, I said as we ran through the corridor, emergency alarms blaring over the loudspeakers. Set new interdimensional coordinates. Take us somewhere the Scarlet King isn't present. That's impossible, she protested. We don't have the knowledge or the technology to. We have to try, I insisted. It's our only chance. As we ran, the shelter shook more violently. The walls were cracking, and through the fissures I could see a dark red liquid seeping in. The alarms blared over the loudspeakers, but now they were distorted, the sounds twisting into inhuman roars. We reached the garage bay where the escape module was still parked. Technicians were working on it, preparing it for a full recharge. We need the module, I said to the technician in charge. It's not ready, the man replied, his eyes strained. 20 more minutes until full charge. We don't have 20 minutes, I snarled. The Scarlet King is coming. As if to punctuate my words, the entire shelter shuddered violently and a section of the ceiling collapsed, revealing the dark red sky above. Through the hole, I could see a pair of colossal eyes looking down the Scarlet King's burning red eyes. Open it, Harper ordered, rushing to the module's control panel. I'll set the new coordinates. The technicians hesitated for a moment, but a roar from above, a sound like the universe tearing apart, spurred them into action. They opened the module door, and Harper and I scrambled inside. You're at 20% power, a technician warned. It might not be enough for a full interdimensional jump. It's all we've got, I said, closing the door as Harper worked at the console. Where are you taking us? She asked, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she rewrote the teleportation protocol. Somewhere the Scarlet King cannot reach, I said, remembering the documents I had studied. A reality where the concept of evil, of suffering, does not exist. A reality that SCP-999 was born to protect. Does such a reality exist? It has to, I whispered. Otherwise, we have no hope left. Shelter M7 was dissolving around us. Through the module's screens, we could see the concrete walls transforming into flesh and blood. The floor became alive and squirmed. And towering over everything, the Scarlet King was pressing in, tearing the shelter apart like a child tearing open a box. Ready? Harper announced. But I can't guarantee it will work. We're going into uncharted territory. Launch it, I said, strapping myself in as another roar shook the module. Now. Harper pressed the button and the screen flashed. Interdimensional teleportation initiated. But this time there was another warning. Low power, recalculating jump distance. The white and red light began to swirl around us again, and the stretching sensation returned. But this time, it was stronger, more painful, as if every cell in my body were being ripped apart and shoved through a tiny hole. What's happening? I yelled over the noise of the teleportation. Insufficient power. Harper yelled back. The module is trying to compensate. Outside the module's viewport, I could see the Scarlet King's dark red world dissolving, replaced by an endless black void dotted with pinpricks of light. The interdimensional void, the space between realities. And in that void, I see something moving, colossal, distorted shapes with familiar seven-pointed crowns. There's something in the interdimensional void, I screamed. Princes, all 7 of them. Harper looked out the window, horror etched on her face. The shapes were closing in on the module, extending impossibly long limbs, trying to grab us as we flew through the void. We have to get out of here, she screamed, frantically pressing buttons to accelerate the teleportation. The module shuddered more violently, lights flickering as it tried to draw on reserves. But the princes were getting closer, their dark red arms only meters away. And then, as suddenly as it began, the teleportation ended. The light dissolved, the stretching sensation vanished, and the module decelerated, drifting in a dark, empty space. Are we there yet? I asked, trying to look out the viewport. I don't know, Harper gasped, checking the systems. Power readings are in the red, we've exhausted everything. But she looked up out the window and I followed her gaze and I saw it. A light not the dark red of the Scarlet King's world, but a pure white light, warm and inviting. It was growing, larger, closer. We made it, I whispered, feeling tears welling up as relief washed over me. We escaped him. Harper grabbed my hand and we watched as the module drifted towards the light. The princes in the void behind us roared in frustration, but they could not follow us into the light, seemingly blocked by an invisible barrier. As we entered the light, I felt a sensation of warmth and peace spread through my body. All fear, all suffering, all despair, it all melted away like mist under the sun. We're here, Harper whispered, a radiant smile on her face. A reality where the Scarlet King cannot reach. And as the module finally drifted into the pool of light, I knew she was right. We had found sanctuary. We had found hope. But still, one question lingered in my mind, even as we drifted into the light. What if this was exactly where the Scarlet King wanted us to go? The pure white light enveloped the module, so blinding that I had to close my eyes. I felt a tremor run through the hull, then a gentle thud as if we had landed on something. The module's systems, already weakened to the point of exhaustion, now went completely silent. The lights went out, the control panels dark. "Where are we?" Harper whispered, her voice still trembling from the ordeal. "I don't know," I replied, trying to peer through the viewport, but it only showed pure white. "But we'll have to go outside to find out." The module was completely out of power. We unbuckled our seatbelts and moved towards the door. Without power, the automatic door mechanism wouldn't work, but there was a manual emergency lever. I pulled it, and with a long hiss, the door slid open, pure white light spilling in, and with it, a sensation of warmth and peace that was almost palpable. I stepped out first, cautiously, not knowing what to expect. What I saw made me freeze in awe. We were in a garden. Not just any garden, but a perfect garden. Every leaf, every flower, every blade of grass exuded a life and vitality I had never seen before. The colors were so vibrant they almost vibrated. The emerald green of the grass, the brilliant red of the flowers, the impossibly clear blue of the sky in the distance. The air was filled with fragrance, a scent that soothed all tension and worry. Harper stepped out after me, and I heard her gasp, taking a deep, amazed breath. "Marcus," she whispered. Where is this?" "I don't know," I replied, still trying to comprehend what I was seeing. "But it's unlike anywhere I've ever been." We stepped forward, looking around in wonder. The garden stretched out in all directions, with white paved paths winding through lawns and flower beds. In the distance, I could see white towers reaching for the sky, slender and elegant, reflecting the sunlight like glass. But the strangest thing was the feeling. A feeling of absolute serenity. All fear, all anxiety, all suffering, it all melted away like mist under the sun. I felt light, as if a burden that had weighed on my soul my entire life had been lifted. "We made it," Harper whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "We found it a reality the Scarlet King cannot reach." "It seems so," I agreed, though a tiny flicker of unease still remained, a minuscule fluctuation in this perfect joy. We began to walk down one of the paved paths, heading towards the distant towers. As we walked, I noticed small creatures dancing among the flowers, beings that looked like pixies or sprites, emitting a firefly-like glow, leaving shimmering trails of light behind them as they moved. "Is this paradise?" Harper asked, observing one of the tiny creatures as it flew past her face, leaving a warmth like sunlight on her skin. "Perhaps," I replied, "or a reality close to it, a place where suffering does not exist." As we continued to walk, the landscape slowly changed. The garden gave way to vast parks, with slender colonnades and crystal fountains spouting iridescent water. And further on, I could see a city unlike any I had ever seen. Its buildings were architectural marvels of glass, marble, and light. Towers reached for the sky, connected by slender bridges. All gleamed under the sun. And in the city, I could see people, or at least human-shaped beings, moving with an ethereal grace and clear purpose. "People," Harper whispered, her eyes wide. "Residents of this reality." As we drew closer to the city, I could see these beings more clearly. They were human in form, but taller, more slender, with skin that glowed faintly. They wore garments that seemed woven from light, flowing down their bodies like water. And as they moved, they almost floated, touching the ground as lightly as feathers. One of these beings noticed our approach and glided towards us with astonishing speed. I tensed, bracing myself for a threat, but Harper placed a hand on my arm. "Marcus," she said, "there's nothing to fear. Nothing can harm us here." The being stopped before us, and I could see its features more clearly. It was indeed human in form, but perfected. All flaws, all signs of mediocrity were removed. Its eyes were large and luminous, filled with an indescribable wisdom and kindness, and its face evoked a beauty that was both timeless masculine and feminine, young and old, a face for all. "Travelers," it said, and its voice was like music, resonating not in the air but in my very mind. "You have come from the place of red, from the realm ruled by the king with the red crown." It was not a question but a statement. "Yes," I replied, surprised that it knew. "We fled the Scarlet King. He invaded our reality." "We know of the king with the red crown," the being said, a fleeting sadness in its face. "We know of his ambition, of his hatred, of his fear." "His fear?" Harper asked, surprised. "What does the Scarlet King fear?" "He fears what he cannot control, what he cannot possess, what he cannot harm." The being looked around the garden. "He fears this place, our kingdom, the Empire of Light. So he cannot come here?" I asked. "Is that why we are safe?" The being inclined its head slightly, the sadness on its face deepening. "No one is truly safe from the king with the red crown. He seeks to destroy all realities, to rule over their ashes." It shook its head gently. "But yes, he cannot directly set foot in this place. Our kingdom is protected by light, by will, by faith, all things he despises, all things he cannot comprehend." The being extended a long, slender arm, gesturing towards the city. "Come, you are weary and exhausted from your journey. Rest, recover, learn." Without another word, we followed it towards the white towers, feeling as if in a dream. This new reality, this so-called Empire of Light, was a complete transformation from the nightmare we had just escaped. While the Scarlet King's world was dark red, bone, and flesh, this place was light, glass, and purity, a perfect contrast. But in my mind, I still recalled the words of the fourth prince. About SCP-999, believed to be the Scarlet King's seventh child, being the final key. And I thought about how we had arrived here, escaping the pursuit of the seven princes. Something was wrong. I could feel it, as if we were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. The being led us to one of the white towers, a structure that soared to the low-hanging clouds. Inside, it was even more beautiful than outside. Vast halls of white marble with golden veins, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the city and the light. Light was everywhere, reflecting off every surface, banishing all shadow. "You will stay here," the being said, leading us to a room with two beds made of something that looked like solidified clouds. "Rest, recover. When you are ready, I will take you to the council. They will want to speak with you." "The council?" I asked. "The rulers of the Empire of Light, the architects of this reality, the ones who have fought the king with the red crown since time immemorial." The being inclined its head slightly. "Rest now, we will speak later." It glided out, leaving us in the beautiful room. Harper sank onto one of the cloud beds, letting out a blissful sigh. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "We escaped hell and walked into heaven." "It seems so," I agreed, still feeling a tiny thread of unease. I looked out the window at the brilliant white light that bathed the city. "But there's still something here, something I can't quite grasp." "Marcus," Harper said, getting up and coming to stand beside me. "We just went through the most terrifying experience imaginable. We saw our reality destroyed. We lost friends, colleagues. We faced the Scarlet King. It's perfectly natural to still feel anxious, even here." She took my hand, and I felt her warmth spread through me. "But we're safe now," she continued. "We've found sanctuary. Perhaps, finally, there's a glimmer of hope." I nodded, trying to let her words soothe my anxiety. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was just the lingering effects of the trauma we had endured. Maybe we truly had found a safe haven, safe from the Scarlet King. We rested, lying on the cloud beds, and I had to admit, it was the most comfortable thing I had ever experienced. It embraced my body like a hug, and I felt the fatigue and tension melt away. Even the wounds and bruises from our adventure seemed to be healing rapidly. The cut on my forehead had closed, and the bruises were fading. I must have fallen asleep, because when I woke, the light in the room had changed. No longer brilliant sunlight, but a soft moonlight emanating from a colossal moon visible through the window. It shone silver and was much larger than the moon in our reality, taking up at least a quarter of the night sky. Harper was still asleep, her breathing even and peaceful. I got up and went to the window, looking out at the city. Under the moonlight, it was even more beautiful. Glass towers reflected the silver light, and the beings glided among them, leaving shimmering trails. But then I saw something that froze me. In the distance, at the edge of the city, I saw a dark red stain, a single stain of color in this city of white and silver. And as I stared, I saw it moving, spreading like an oil slick on water. "No," I whispered, feeling dread return. "He can't be here." I looked closer, and with growing horror, I realized that the dark red stain was not one, but many. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of small dark red creatures were moving through the city stealthily. Creatures like the ones I had seen in the Scarlet King's world. I rushed back to the bed, shaking Harper awake. "Harper?" I whispered urgently. "Wake up, something's wrong." She woke immediately, still with the instincts of our days on the run. "What is it?" "Look," I said, pointing out the window towards the spreading red stain. "The Scarlet King, he's found us." Harper looked out, and I saw her face pale, even in the silver moonlight. "But how?" she whispered. "They said he couldn't come here." "Not directly," I replied, remembering the exact words of the being. "But perhaps he can send his soldiers, fragments of himself." "We have to warn them," Harper said, rushing to the door. We left the room and stepped into the corridor, unsure where to go or who to find, but we didn't need to go far. The being who had welcomed us was waiting, as if it knew we would awaken. "You have seen them," it said, not a question. "The Scarlet King," I said. "He's here." "Not the king," the being replied. "Only his servants, small fragments of him. They have been seeping through our defenses subtly for centuries." It looked out the window. "But now they appear openly because you have come here." "Why would our coming here change anything?" Harper asked, confused. The being looked at us with eyes of infinite sadness. "Because you have fulfilled the prophecy. When the seventh child returns to the kingdom of light, the child of red will open the final gate." "The seventh child?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "One of you," the being said, looking between us. "One of you is the seventh child of the king with the red crown. What in your reality is called SCP-999. I felt as if the floor were collapsing beneath my feet. "No, that's impossible. SCP-999 was left behind in our reality. It was transformed by the amplifier device." "Not the orange object you carried in the glass cage," the being explained, "but its essence. Its soul, if you will, it traveled with one of you." It looked directly at me, and I felt a profound fear. "It has been inside you from the very beginning, Dr. Gord. Ever since you faced the first prince in Iceland, it chose you as its vessel." "No," I shook my head, backing away. "That can't be. I'm human. I'm Marcus Gord." "And you still are that human," the being said, its voice gentle. "But you are also something else, something more. You carry the seventh child within you, and now you have brought it to the kingdom of light, where it was born." "Born?" Harper asked, her voice trembling. "I thought SCP-999 was born from the Scarlet King's seventh bride." "It was," the being replied. "And where did the seventh bride come from? She came from here, from the Empire of Light." It looked out the window at the spreading red stains. "That is why the king with the red crown hates this place so much, because we took his seventh bride, the only one he ever truly loved, and now the seventh child has returned." I felt something inside me stir, as if reacting to these words. A warmth spread from the center of my body, radiating through my limbs. "So what does all this mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I carry SCP-999 inside me. Why?" "To protect it," the being explained. "To bring it to this place, the only place in all realities where it can fulfill its destiny." "And what is that destiny?" Harper asked. The being looked towards the red stains, now spread wider, covering almost a quarter of the city. "To face its father," it said, its voice heavy. "To end this eternal war once and for all." Suddenly, a chime echoed through the city, a sound both clear and powerful, but also alarming. "The council is convening," the being said. "They know of the enemy's presence of your presence." It extended a hand towards us. "Come, time is running out." We followed the being through the corridors of the tower, up spiral staircases, higher and higher. As we went, I could feel the movement within me growing stronger, like a small flame igniting, becoming warmer and brighter. SCP-999, I wondered to myself. "Are you truly inside me?" I received no verbal answer, but I felt a wave of warmth wash over me, a sense of positivity and excitement. Finally, we reached a large door made of something that looked like crystal, glowing with its own light. The being stopped before the door. "The council awaits," it said. "They will explain everything, and they will help you prepare for what is to come." "What is to come?" I asked, feeling fear surge. "The final battle," the being said, its voice solemn, "between light and red." The crystal door slid open, and light poured out, so blinding that I had to close my eyes. When I could finally open them, I saw a colossal circular chamber, its walls made of the same glowing crystal as the door. The floor also glowed with intricate patterns etched into its surface, forming a colossal symbol, a sun with 7 rays. And standing around the room in a semicircle were 7 tall beings, similar to the one who had led us here, but larger, more radiant, emitting a light so intense it was difficult to look directly at them. "The Council of 7 Lights," the being announced, bowing its head in reverence. "The rulers of the Empire of Light, and these," it gestured towards us, "are the guests from the reality consumed by red. One of them carries the 7th prince." The 7 council members looked at us, and I felt as if my soul were laid bare under their gaze. Every secret, every fear, every thought all exposed to their brilliant light. Finally, one of the council members, the tallest and most luminous, stepped forward. "The time has finally come," the being's voice resonated, not through the air, but in my very mind like a symphony of light and thought. "The circle is closing. The war is reaching its climax." "I don't understand," I said, my voice faint compared to the booming sound of the being. "What war, and why do I carry SCP-999 within me?" "To explain that," the being replied, "we must tell you of the origin of all this, of the war that has raged since before time began." The being extended a luminous arm, and the space between us transformed. Suddenly, I found myself looking at a miniature universe. Stars, planets, galaxies, all spinning in an eternal dance. "In the beginning," the being said, "there was only one reality, one universe, one life shared by all of us. But within that reality, there was a schism between light and darkness, between order and chaos, between creation and destruction." The scene shifted, showing 2 opposing forces, one of pure light, the other of dark red shadow. "We represent light and order," the being continued. "And our adversary, the one you call the Scarlet King, represents destruction and chaos." A war erupted, a war that tore the primal reality into countless different realities. The scene shifted again, showing the single universe shattering into thousands, millions of tiny fragments, each a separate reality. "From then on, we have fought across realities, trying to prevent the Scarlet King from destroying all that exists. But he is immensely powerful, for he finds strength in destruction, in pain, and in chaos." The image changed to a colossal dark red creature, the Scarlet King with 7 crowns on his head, seated on a throne made of bones. To counter him, we created a weapon, an entity that could stand against his powers, an entity that could bring joy, hope, and happiness, things the Scarlet King cannot tolerate. The image changed again, showing a small orange creature dancing SCP-999. But for this weapon to be as powerful as possible, it needed to have a connection to the Scarlet King. It needed to be a part of him. Only then could it truly defeat him. So we enacted a plan, an incredibly dangerous plan. We sent one of our own to become the Scarlet King's bride. The scene transitioned to a beautiful woman with luminous skin, chained to a dark red throne. Around her were 6 other women also chained, but these were twisted and distorted by the Scarlet King's influence. "The 7th bride," the being said, "the only one the Scarlet King ever truly loved, in his own way." And from this union, the 7th child was born, SCP-999, a being with the Scarlet King's power, but with our essence. The image showed the birth of a small, luminous creature, then being taken away from the 7th bride. We rescued the child and hid it, waiting for the opportune moment, and our plan worked. To a point, the being's voice grew sad. The Scarlet King discovered that his 7th child was still alive. That is why he created the 7 seals, the 7 pillars to imprison himself. Not because he was defeated, as you thought, but because he was waiting for the opportunity to find his lost child. "So Procedure 110 Montauk," I asked, my mind reeling with all this new information. "The children killed in Iceland, all part of the Scarlet King's plan?" the being confirmed. "Each child slain, a pillar broken, each soul sacrificed, weakening the chains that bind him. And your Foundation, in all its efforts to stop him, actually inadvertently helped him. But why is SCP-999 within me?" I asked, my hand unconsciously touching my chest, where I felt the growing warm presence. "When you faced the first prince in Iceland," the being explained, "you came into contact with the tears of red, a substance your Foundation believed would weaken the Scarlet King. But it was actually a fragment of him, designed to seek out and bond with his child." "So I was influenced from the start." I felt sick to my stomach. "I was just a puppet of the Scarlet King?" "No," the being replied definitively. "The tears simply marked you. The soul of SCP-999 chose you because you stood against the Scarlet King, because you possessed the will and courage to face evil." Harper, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. "So what happens now? What will happen to Marcus?" The council exchanged glances, a silent conversation I could sense but not understand. The time has come for the final battle, the primary being finally said. The Scarlet King, through his servants, is advancing into the Empire of Light, and when he arrives here, he will seek to reclaim his 7th child. And if he succeeds, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Then all realities will fall, the being replied. The Scarlet King will use the power of the 7th child to break the final barriers between realities, and all will be swept into his kingdom. A universe of blood, suffering, and eternal death. How can we stop that? Harper asked, her voice strong despite the desperate situation. The only way, the being said, looking directly at me, is to release SCP-099 from its vessel from Dr. Gord, and allow it to face its father in its true form. And that will kill me. I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Not necessarily, the being replied, but it will be a process no one has ever endured. Your soul and the prince's soul will have to separate. It may be painful. Whatever pain it takes, I said, suddenly feeling a new resolve. If that's the only way to stop the Scarlet King, if that's the only way to save Harper, to save anyone still alive in our reality. I felt Harper grab my hand, squeezing tightly. Marcus, you don't have to do this. I have to, I said, looking into her eyes. You've seen what the Scarlet King did to our world. You've seen him kill person after person. I can't let him do that to this place or to any other reality. I turned back to the council. I will do whatever it takes. Separate SCP-999 from me. The council members exchanged glances again, and then the primary being nodded. You are very brave, Dr. Gord. But before we proceed, you need to understand something more about SCP-999, about its true nature. What true nature? It is not simply a small, joyful creature, as you have known it in your reality. That is only a tiny fraction of its true power. In its full form, it is an almost omnipotent entity, a prince of light with power nearly equal to its father's. Then why did it act like a pet in our reality? Harper asked. Partly disguise, the being explained, and partly because it is still a child by our standards. It has been kept in a larval state to avoid detection by the Scarlet King. But now, it is time for its true maturation. Suddenly, an urgent alarm bell rang through the room, and one of the other council members stepped forward. They're attacking, the new being said, its voice urgent. The Scarlet King's forces have surrounded the tower. We must act quickly. To the crystal chamber. The primary being ordered. Hurry! We were led out of the circular chamber, down a long spiral staircase that seemed to have no end. As we ran, I could hear the sounds of battle from outside. Roars, metallic clashes, and a sound as if reality itself were being torn apart. What's happening outside? I asked as we continued to race down the stairs. Our people are fighting the Scarlet King's forces, the guiding being explained. But we cannot hold them forever. He is bringing his full power here, breaking through all barriers, all defenses. Finally, we reached the bottom of the spiral staircase, where a large, transparent crystal door stood. The being placed its hand on the door, and it opened, revealing a vast chamber within. It was the largest space I had ever seen inside a building, a colossal cavern with a vaulted ceiling so high I couldn't see the top. And in the center of the room was a massive crystal sphere, emitting a brilliant rainbow light, slowly rotating in the air. The core crystal, the being explained, seeing our amazed expressions. The heart of the Empire of Light, and where we will perform the ritual of separation. The council members formed a circle around the crystal sphere, raising their hands. A stream of light poured from their hands, connecting to the sphere, making it spin faster. Dr. Gord, the primary being said. Step into the center, directly beneath the core crystal. I glanced at Harper, trying to maintain a brave facade despite my profound fear. Marcus, she said, and I could see tears in her eyes. It's going to be okay, I said, not knowing if it was true. Be safe, Harper. You too, Marcus, she whispered. I took a deep breath and stepped into the center of the circle. Immediately, I felt an intense energy surge through my body, and the warm presence within me. SCP-999, the 7th prince began to stir more violently, as if responding to a call. The ritual will begin, the primary being announced. Once started, it cannot be interrupted. Are you ready, Dr. Gord? I am ready, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The council members began to chant, a celestial melody that belonged to no language I had ever heard. The sound of pure light translated into music. The core crystal spun faster, glowing more intensely, and a beam of light from it shone down, enveloping me in a pillar of brilliant light. The sensation was indescribable. It was as if every atom in my body were being separated and examined individually. Every molecule of my being was illuminated and analyzed. Not painful, not exactly, but a strange, profound feeling of dissociation, as if I were being split into two separate entities. And then I felt a SCP-999 leaving me, like a warm wave receding from every cell, every nerve, every blood vessel. It floated up from me like a faint orange smoke, growing denser, clearer as it hovered before me, but it was no longer a small, gelatinous blob. As it fully separated from me, it began to change, to expand, to grow. The faint orange color became more vibrant, like a combination of sunset and sunrise. It expanded into a humanoid shape, as tall as I was, then taller, larger, until it was nearly as tall as the vaulted ceiling. And finally, it took form. A humanoid being at least 3 meters tall, with brilliant orange skin that glowed from within. It had eyes like golden flames, and it wore a 7-pointed crown, like that of the Scarlet King, but instead of dark red, this crown was made of pure light. The 7th prince, the primary being whispered with reverence. He has finally returned. SCP-999, the 7th prince, looked down at me, and though its face was completely different, I could still recognize the innocence and kindness of the small creature I had known in my reality. It extended a colossal hand downwards, gently touching my shoulder. "Thank you, my friend," it said, and its voice was like pure joy translated into sound. "You brought me home." I wanted to reply, but no words came. Instead, I just nodded, tears streaming down my cheeks. Suddenly, the entire tower shook violently, as if struck by a colossal force. The council members stopped chanting, looking up with alarm. "He has arrived," the primary being said, its voice heavy. "The Scarlet King himself, not just through his servants." The 7th prince turned to look up at the vaulted ceiling. "My father comes for me," it said, as was foretold. "What will he do?" a council member asked, fear evident in their voice. "I will face my father," the 7th prince replied simply, "as I was born to do." Then it turned back to me once more. "Marcus Gord, you carried me within you. Our souls have been connected. Until this battle ends, you will still carry a part of me." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means you will see," the prince said, a warm glow in its fiery eyes. "You will witness the final battle, and through it you will understand all." The tower shook again, more violently than before. Fragments of crystal rained down from the vaulted ceiling. Harper ran to my side, grabbing my hand. "Where do we go?" she asked the council members. "There is nowhere to go," the primary being replied. "The battle will engulf the entire Empire of Light. Nowhere is safe." "But I can protect them," the 7th prince said. It extended a hand, and a faint orange light enveloped Harper and me. "This will keep them safe from my father's power, and it will allow them to witness what is to come." The vaulted ceiling above us tore open. Crystal shattered and fell, but was blocked by the prince's shield of light. Through the hole in the ceiling, I could see the sky no longer the silver sky of the Empire of Light, but a dark, blood-red canvas with black cracks running through it like veins. And from that sky, a colossal creature descended, taller than the tower, larger than the city itself. A creature with raw red skin, with 7 dark red crowns on a colossal head. With too many eyes to count, all burning red like hellfire, the Scarlet King, the destroyer of realities. "Well, father," the 7th prince said, its voice echoing not just in the chamber but across the entire city, "I have awaited this encounter." The Scarlet King lowered his colossal head, looking through the hole in the ceiling directly at the prince. A laugh boomed, a sound like the universe tearing apart. "My child," the Scarlet King said. And his voice was the sound of endless suffering, of pure despair. "You have finally returned to your father." "Not to join you, father," the prince replied, "but to end this once and for all." And with those words, the 7th prince ascended, flying through the hole in the ceiling, out into the sky, to face its father, the Scarlet King, the destroyer of worlds. The 7th prince ascended into the dark red sky, a brilliant orange flame against the scarlet gloom. The Scarlet King loomed before it, colossal and terrifying, its body covered in eyes, mouths, and tentacles, all squirming and groaning in a symphony of agony. I watched from below, protected by the prince's faint orange light. Harper stood beside me, her hand gripping mine, and the council members had gathered around us, observing the confrontation with solemn expressions. "What will happen?" I asked the primary being. "The final battle," it replied simply. "One side will win, the other will be destroyed, and the fate of all realities will be decided." In the sky, the Scarlet King extended one of his colossal arms towards his child, not in aggression, but as an inviting, almost caressing gesture. "My child," he said, his voice shaking the foundations of civilization. Why do you stand against your father? We are of one blood, one flesh. Come to me, and together we will remake the universes to our will. The universes are not to be remade, the prince replied, still hovering before its father, unmoving. They are to exist, to grow, to evolve on their own path. They are weak, the Scarlet King roared, and a wave of dark red energy erupted from him, shaking reality itself. They are filled with suffering and meaninglessness. I will burn them all and create a single universe, subjugated to my will. And that is why I must stop you, father, the prince said, its voice a perfect counterpoint to its father's not of agony and fear, but of joy and hope. Because you cannot see the beauty in what you seek to destroy. The Scarlet King hissed in fury, and this time he held nothing back. A beam of dark red energy shot from one of his colossal eyes, hurtling straight at the prince. But his child did not move. Instead, it extended a hand, and a shield of brilliant orange energy materialized, absorbing the blow. You cannot destroy me, father, the prince said, still calm. I am a part of you, and you are a part of me. Then become one with me, the Scarlet King roared, launching a colossal arm to snatch his child. This time, the prince flew away, moving with impossible speed, leaving a trail of orange light behind it. I will not become one with you, it said, but I can show you another way. And with those words, the seventh prince did something none of us expected. It flew directly towards the Scarlet King, not to attack, but to embrace one of his colossal arms. As the prince's orange skin touched its father's dark red skin, there was a blinding flash, a flash so intense that I had to close my eyes, even with the prince's protective shield. And when I could open my eyes again, I saw the unbelievable. Where the prince had touched the Scarlet King, the dark red color was slowly turning orange. What is this? The Scarlet King roared, trying to pull his arm away, but the prince held on tight. What are you doing to me? I am showing you, the prince replied, its voice gentle even as it resonated. Showing you the joy you have forgotten, the happiness you have forgotten how to feel. The orange continued to spread up the Scarlet King's arm, and I could see him struggling, trying to recoil, but unable to escape his child's grip. Stop, he roared, but his voice was beginning to change, less anguish, less fury. Stop, I do not want this. You need this, father, the prince said, holding on firmly. You have suffered for too long. You have inflicted suffering for too long. The orange spread faster now, moving up the Scarlet King's arm, to his shoulder, to his chest. And as it spread, I could see his body changing. The eyes, mouths, and tentacles vanished, replaced by smooth, luminous skin. His seven-pointed crown, once dark red, began to glow with a faint orange light. No, the Scarlet King whispered, his voice now almost human. I cannot feel this, I cannot accept this. You can, father, the prince said, and you will, because this is the truth, this is real. With a final cry not of anger or hatred, but of release, the Scarlet King surrendered. The orange flooded his entire body, transforming him from a terrifying creature into a radiant entity, almost identical to the seventh prince, differing only in size, larger, more powerful, but with the same essence. And with the Scarlet King's transformation, the sky also changed. The dark red began to dissipate, replaced by a clear blue with gentle white clouds forming. The black cracks vanished, closing like healing wounds. The sky, Harper whispered beside me, it's healing. Not just the sky, the primary being said, its voice filled with wonder, but all realities. The Scarlet King is being healed, and with him all the damage he has wrought is being healed. In the sky, the Scarlet King, now no longer scarlet but a brilliant orange entity, and the seventh prince hovered together, embracing in a cosmic hug. Energy radiated from their union, spreading throughout the empire of light and beyond, across realities, healing and restoring everything it touched. We can create something better, I heard the prince say, its voice softer now, less resonant. Not destruction but construction, not suffering but joy. I had forgotten, the creature that was once the Scarlet King said. I had forgotten what this felt like. Joy, happiness, love, now I remember, and together we can help others remember. The two entities began to merge into one, not as the Scarlet King had intended an assimilation, a consumption but a willing harmonization. Their orange lights blended, growing brighter, more powerful, until I could no longer distinguish father from child. And finally, there was only one single entity, a brilliant orange creature with 14 points on its crown, 7 for the Scarlet King and 7 for the seventh prince. It shone like a second sun, filling the empire of light with warmth and peace. Is it over? I asked, looking up at the new being with amazement. Ended and begun, the primary being replied. The war is over, but the work of restoration, the work of rebuilding, That has just begun. The being in the sky, the combined Scarlet King and Seventh Prince, slowly descended towards us. As it approached, I could feel an absolute warmth and peace radiating from it, like the feeling when SCP-999 touched me in my reality, but 1,000, a million times more powerful. "Marcus," it said, its voice now a combination of the Scarlet King and the Prince. "You helped bring us to this moment. You endured much suffering to bring my child, my part, home." "I only did what I had to do," I said, still stunned by the powerful being before me. To stop what the Scarlet King was doing. "And now you will be rewarded for your courage." The being extended a colossal hand, gently touching my forehead. "Your reality was grievously wounded, but not beyond salvation. I will restore it, bring life back to those who were lost, and erase the pain I inflicted." "Everyone will live again?" Harper asked, her voice trembling with hope. "Freja, Rodriguez, Chen, all those who died?" "They never truly died," the being explained. "Their souls were held in stasis in the interdimensional void. Now they will be returned to their rightful place, where they belong." It turned towards the Council of Light. "And you, who have guarded the light for so long, your work is not yet finished. You will continue to stand vigil, but not against me, but alongside me. Together, we will protect realities from other threats that time may bring." The council members bowed in reverence. "We will serve, as we always have." The being turned back to me and Harper. "Now, it is time for you to return home, to your reality which is now healed." "And SCP-999? I asked. "What will become of it?" The being gently touched my chest. "A part of it will always remain within you as a reminder, but the version your world knows will return, joyful and harmless as ever. A reminder that even in the deepest darkness there is always light." "And the Foundation?" Harper asked. "Will they know what happened?" "They will know that a great danger has been averted. They will know that SCP-001, the Scarlet King, is no longer a threat. But the details, the true nature of what transpired, that will only be known by a chosen few." It looked directly into my eyes. "Those like you, Marcus Gord." The being extended its hand again, this time encompassing both Harper and me in a brilliant orange light. I felt a stretching sensation, like the teleportation in the escape module, but more pleasant, smoother. "Go home now," the being said. Its voice faded as the world around me began to dissolve in white light. "Return to where you belong." The world became pure white, blinding, and I felt myself drifting, floating in nothingness. Beside me, I could sense Harper's presence, drifting with me, and as I drifted, I felt a strange joy, peace, absolute rightness. As if everything in my life had led to this moment, and now I could truly rest. Then slowly, gradually, the white light faded, and the world began to return. I awoke in a hospital bed in a clean white room. Gentle sunlight streamed through the window, casting warm patches of light on the floor. I could hear birds chirping from somewhere outside and distant voices normal and mundane. I slowly sat up, feeling aches in my body, but not a terrible pain. A soreness, as if I had undergone major surgery and was recovering. Not like the pain of being nearly crushed by a prince of the Scarlet King. The Scarlet King. The Seventh Prince. The memories flooded back, sharp and vivid. Iceland. Shelter M7, the transformation, the Empire of Light, the final battle in the sky. Had it all really happened, or was it just a dream, a hallucination crafted by a traumatized mind? The door to the room opened and a nurse entered, smiling when she saw me awake. "Good morning, Dr. Gord," she said cheerfully. "Glad to see you're awake. Let me get the doctor to check on you." "Where am I?" I asked, my voice hoarse from disuse. "Site-01 medical facility," she replied. "You've been here for 3 days." Site-01. The Foundation's Central Command Headquarters. I had never been here before. Very few researchers were granted access. The nurse left. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and gold-rimmed glasses entered. He wore a white lab coat with the Foundation insignia. "Dr. Gord," he greeted, his voice warm. "I'm Dr. Langston. I've been looking after you since you were brought in." "How are you feeling?" I'm not sure," I said honestly. "I don't know what happened. I don't know what's real." Dr. Langston nodded empathetically. "That's understandable. You've been through a significant trauma, both physical and psychological, but I can assure you that you're safe now. The deluge incident has been averted." "Is that what they're calling it? An incident? When the Scarlet King unleashed himself and attacked our reality?" Dr. Langston looked at me strangely. "Yes, that's one way to describe it. How much do you remember?" "Everything," I replied. "Iceland, Husavik, the murdered children, the cave, then Shelter M7, SCP-999, the escape module to Site-19, and the Empire of Light, the Seventh Prince." Dr. Langston listened intently, nodding occasionally. "If you don't mind," he finally said, "I'd like to bring someone else in. You're cleared to see someone." He left the room, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I wondered what had happened to Harper, to Freja, and the others. Had they truly lived again, as the being the combination of the Scarlet King and the Seventh Prince had promised? A few minutes later, the door opened again and a familiar figure walked in. "Harper," I exclaimed, relief washing over me as she strode quickly towards my bed. "Marcus," she smiled, but I could see she had been crying. "You're awake." She hugged me, and I hugged her back, feeling intense emotion surge in my chest. "What happened?" I asked when she finally released me. "All of it the Empire of Light, the final battle, was it real?" "I don't know," she confessed, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "I remember everything just like you, but when we returned, everything was different, as if nothing had ever happened." "When did we return?" 3 days ago. We were found outside Shelter M7, unconscious. When I woke up, everything was back to normal. No sign of the Scarlet King, no distorted reality, no collapsed anchors. "And the others, Freja, Rodriguez, Chen?" "All alive," she said, a faint smile on her lips. "They don't remember anything. To them, we completed our mission in Iceland, reporting a potential SCP anomaly, but nothing serious happened. No dead children, no cave, no princes, no collapsing pillars." "And SCP-999? I asked, unconsciously touching my chest. "Still at Site 19, happy and healthy as ever," I checked. "It's like it never left." I struggled to comprehend this. "So what happened to us? Was it an illusion, a shared dream?" "I don't think so," Harper shook her head. "It was too real, too consistent. And there's this." She pulled something from her jacket pocket and handed it to me. It was a small fragment of something that looked like crystal, emitting a faint orange glow. I took it and immediately felt a warmth radiating from it and through my hand. "I found it in my pocket when I woke up," she explained. "A fragment from the core crystal, I think, from the Empire of Light." I looked at the crystal fragment, turning it in my hand. It was beautiful, ethereal, unlike any material I had ever seen. "If it was real," I said, "then that means the Scarlet King was redeemed." Harper finished my thought. Our reality was restored. Everyone came back to life. "And no one else knows," I sighed, realizing the implication. "To the rest of the world, nothing happened at all." "Not nothing," Harper chuckled softly. "O5 knows something happened. That's why we're at Site-01. They want to talk to us to find out what we know." "And what will we tell them?" I asked. She looked at me meaningfully. "The truth, or as much of it as they can handle. That SCP-001, the Scarlet King, is no longer a threat. That the danger has passed, perhaps forever." I nodded, thinking of what the being had said, that the details would only be known by a chosen few. "Will they believe us?" "They'll have to," she replied, "because all the data supports it. All anomalous activity related to SCP-001 has ceased completely worldwide. Procedure 110 Montauk is no longer necessary. Everything is peaceful." I looked out the window at the clear blue sky and gentle white clouds drifting by. A normal world, free from the threat of the Scarlet King. A world saved by the sacrifice of so many and by the unexpected love of a small orange blob for its monstrous father. "What about me?" I asked, touching my chest again. "A part of SCP-999 is still within me. I can feel it." "I know," Harper smiled. "I can see it in your eyes, a faint orange glow when you laugh. What does that mean for my future?" "I don't know," she confessed, "but I think it's a gift. A reminder of what happened, of what we saw." The door to the room opened again, and a woman in a black suit entered. No insignia, no name, but I knew immediately who she was. A member of the O5 Council, the supreme rulers of the Foundation. "Dr. Gord, Dr. Harper," she greeted. "I'm glad to see you both well. We have much to discuss." Harper and I exchanged glances. It was time to share our story, or at least the version of it that the world could comprehend. "Of course," I said, feeling a strange peace settle over me. "We're ready." A month later, I stood before the glass pane of the containment chamber, looking at SCP-999 as it bounced happily, making soft, joyful sounds. Since my return, I had been granted special access to all documents related to SCP-001 and SCP-999, as well as permission to visit the little creature whenever I wished. Unprecedented privilege, but after our report to O5, it seemed they had agreed that my connection to SCP-999 was unique. "It missed you," a familiar voice said from behind me. I turned and saw Harper, smiling radiantly. "I missed it too," I admitted, though a part of it still remained with me. "How's the new job?" she asked, standing beside me to watch SCP-999. "Interesting," I chuckled. "I never thought I'd be heading a whole new research department." But the interdimensional phenomena research department seems fitting, doesn't it? No one is more suitable than you, she said, gently touching my arm. Since our return, our relationship had changed. Going through what we had together, seeing the end of the world and its restoration, had forged a bond that others couldn't understand. It was natural that we grew closer, finding comfort and understanding in each other that couldn't be found elsewhere. SCP-999 noticed us and bounced up and down with renewed excitement, emitting joyful boop sounds. A researcher inside the containment room opened the door, and the little creature raced out, sliding across the floor towards us. "Hello, little friend," I laughed, kneeling down as it approached. SCP-999 leaped onto me, enveloping me in a warm, gelatinous hug. And as it did, I felt a perfect wave of pure happiness wash over me. But there was something else to a sense of connection and understanding, as if we were still a part of each other. And for a moment, a fleeting glimpse, I saw it. A vision of a tall, brilliant orange being with a 14-pointed crown, hovering among the stars, healing damaged realities, bringing joy to places that had known only suffering. "We are still at work," I heard a voice whisper in my mind. "Still healing, still rebuilding. Thank you for your help, Marcus Gord. Because of you, all realities will know the light once more." The vision faded, and I was back in the Foundation lab, still embraced by SCP-999. But now I knew the truth, not just a memory of what had happened, but an understanding of what was still happening, beyond our sight, beyond our reality. Harper looked at me, a worried frown on her face. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," I smiled, letting SCP-999 climb onto my shoulder. "Just an old friend." Together, the three of us, myself, Harper, and SCP-999, walked down the corridor of Site-19, away from the containment area. Tomorrow, we would return to our work reports, research, analysis. The Foundation's work would continue, forever vigilant against threats from incomprehensible entities, but at least one of those threats was no more. The Scarlet King had been redeemed, transformed from a creature of pure destruction into a being of creation and restoration. And though perhaps only Harper and I knew the full truth, it was a truth I would carry with me for the rest of my life. A glimmer of hope in a world often threatened by darkness. I looked up at the sky through a window as we passed. Brilliant blue with gentle white clouds, so normal it was almost unbelievable. But I knew something most people didn't, that behind that sky, beyond our reality, a being was standing guard, watching, protecting. And within me, a small part of that being continued to exist. A faint orange spark, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, light can still find its way.